race. Once you start, it's a downhill slide mostly. There's a lot of whippersnipping going on down there. Michael Matthews all the way through the grass, and I think it was Luke Rowe there on the right-hand side that said, all right, here you go, get through there. You're the last one.
Yes, taking tickets.
But on the other side at the same time, one of the Tinkoff riders trimmed the grass hedge up on the footpath, and he's making his way across, turning into quite a big group now. And back in the peloton, they're trying to shut off the front of that group and say, that is now it, no more.
Rui Costa once again, the former world champion. Lawrence Tendam behind him, followed then by Tony Martin in the blue colours of edX Quickstep. It's then Pierre Rolland. Michael Matthews is on his way across. Villimos, Pantano is there. And it looked like Robert Kieselowski from Tinkoff was the last one on the line.
And Thomas de Gent, 5 minutes at 500 watts. That should do the trick.
Let's see what happens. This is an 8-kilometre climb that they're on now. There are no points up for grabs in the King of the Mountains classification, but de Gent is going to sort things out for that break.
Other riders there spotted Lutsenko from Astana. He's been very active. And even when he was caught the other day, did the best he could for Fabio Aru. And back here in the bunch now, Lotto Soudal on the front, Peter Sagan in the middle, Sky Riders all across the front. Everyone on the front row has teammates in the break, and they're shutting things down. Good news for the sprinters left in the bunch. Good news for the guys who have made the jump, managed to get through the grass and get themselves up there, a la Michael Matthews.
Almost. Michael Matthews still trying to bridge that gap. And if you are trying to bridge the gap to Thomas de Gent, doing what you said, 5 minutes at 500 watts. And if you're not familiar with riding at wattage, basically it means he's going really hard for 5 minutes. It's going to be a fair effort just to bridge that small gap.
And it might be better just to let Thomas de Gent do his 5 minutes at 500 watts, then ease the tempo and then make your way across steadily. But definitely make sure you get there. We've seen chasing groups over this last week not make contact with the original break. They're out there chasing them all day, but stuck in the middle. De Gent, a quick look over the shoulder. He sees the gap between himself, the chase group, and he wouldn't even have seen the peloton. They've sat up completely. He knows he should be able to ease off just slightly.
Try telling him that as Tony Galopin sits in second position. Two riders from Lotto Soudal in the front group. And George Bennett, as soon as we saw him at the head of the race in that neutral zone, the expectation was that he was going to get in the breakaway, and that is exactly what he has done. Froome is happy with the situation. None of his real rivals are in that breakaway. And Steve Cummings at the back of the race, he's got the call up for the Olympic Games. After he won the stage in the first week of this year's tour, a lot of the British supporters, spectators of the race, they were making the comments, why is he the reserve? Why is he not going to the Olympic Games? Well, Peter Kenyak, the former British national champion, he's struggled with form after a broken collarbone earlier in the season, and they've decided Peter's not the best man for the job. Steve Cummings is now going to get his chance at the Olympic Games.
Well, he's had quite a recent crash where he broke his collarbone again and wasn't going to have time. A little bit same situation as Simon Gerrans, although Simon broke his a good 3 weeks after Kenyak.
Bennett in the breakaway for Lotto NL Jumbo. For the Lotto Soudal team, it is Thomas de Gent and Tony Galopin that have made the move. Dimension Data represented at the front of the race with Nat Nelburhan, one of the youngest men in the race.
At least halfway up this final climb and then hit them. Do the same as he did the other day, but I believe he does need to start a bit earlier.
Alexis Villimos in the breakaway for AG2R Le Mondial. They're firmly of the view that Romain Bardet can make the podium and stretch his way up into the top three. In the current overall standings, Romain Bardet is in 5th position. He's 3 seconds in front of Richie Porte, and he is 41 seconds behind 2nd place, 3rd place overall. And this is the back of the group who's already feeling the pressure. I didn't think the computer was right with Sepulveda, because Sepulveda, the Argentinian on that team, has got a 5 o'clock shadow as soon as he's put the razor away.
Well, unfortunate for the Fortuneo team. Wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Still Thomas de Gent setting the tempo at the front. He's prepared to be the one that makes the breakaway work. They're already out to a 3 minute and 34 second advantage, as Rafael Micah is communicating back with the team car. Surely at this point, Robbie, he can afford to say, we've got enough of a leeway, everybody else contribute.
They've definitely got enough leeway that they know this is going to be the one, and that might be in the favour of Breen, who's just been dropped. They're only about a kilometre or so from the top of the climb. He may be able to get himself back on over the top. Got that descent and long valley to recover before the next Category 1, so he may get the opportunity to get back on. And De Gent, at least after the top of this climb, will be looking for a bit more assistance. And even though he knows Maker's there and in his wheel, pretty sure he's still going to sprint for the mountain points along the road, because Maker's going to follow him everywhere. But none on this first climb, so nothing to worry about just yet.
But Seppel
from Trek Segafredo in the black and white, everybody looking up there and almost saying to themselves, what's going on here?
There's a bit of conversation, just communicating amongst themselves as to who is moving up the road. It's stealth. They've just tried to sneak under the radar. Lots of cheese produced up here as we look at the cows at the top of the hill. Cattle farming and cheese production. And Vincenzo Nibali now talking to the sports director. And they're not going full gas. At this point, Paulo Tiralongo looks pretty comfortable.
Peter Sagan's still riding on the front of the peloton, and they're spread all across the road, so they haven't really picked up the pace. They're just matching what Astana's doing, and these guys are looking around and say, well, come along, come on, this is what's going to happen. Get in the wheel.
In second position with a little bit of pink in his glasses, that's Diego Rosa. Heard a strong rumour on the rest day that he's moving from Astana to Team Sky. As if they need any more reinforcements in the mountains, Team Sky.
He'd be a good pickup, and you've already seen in this edition of the Tour, as in past editions, Team Sky are so strong, such depth in numbers, they just get the peloton in a chokehold. They set such a high tempo that the favourites don't even think about attacking while they're riding, because they're putting everybody on the limit. A guy like Walt Pouls, he could be a legitimate team leader in his own right.
He has made the statement that he hopes next year he'll get the green light from Team Sky to prepare himself specifically for either the Giro d'Italia or the Volta a España, where he has earned the right, based on the way he's ridden this year, to go to one of the big three as the outright leader.
And we've seen them do that. They gave Richie Porte the go-ahead to do it in the Giro d'Italia last year. And what it also starts to give those guys is it whets their appetite for even more, and then to be a leader at the Tour de France. And that's when you see them change teams, a la Richie Porte at BMC.
And he has absolutely made the right decision. And
100%.
more movement from Astana. Two more riders coming across. Luis Leon Sanchez, Tanel Kangert also looking to bridge the gap. Well, this is an intriguing move from the Astana team. Fabio Aru, of all the riders inside the top 10, it has really only been Astana that have tried to do something about the stranglehold that Sky have had on the race. And now we're seeing a reaction from Movistar, Peter Sagan as well, and the Lampre Merida team going across. Tiralongo, followed then by Diego Rosa. It's Skrivko who's the next in line. This is winner Anacona from Movistar. Roman Kreuziger is also responding from the Tinkoff team. And that looks like it might be Christopher Juhl Jensen from the Orica Bike Exchange squad, who's also in here. We'll wait until we get a slightly closer look. Rodriguez is certainly there in the red colours. Kreuziger at the back of the group with the glasses comfortably changing their position.
Yep, right behind Peter Sagan. Anacona straight to the front, so not really leaving it completely up to Astana.
Two riders from Movistar in this group. Winner Anacona, the Colombian climber, now going through to the front. He has been a stage winner at the Tour of Spain, but this isn't about winner Anacona adding to his list of successes. This is a daring move.
But the whole peloton now onto the descent, because this is the back of the bunch. We know that because Steve Cummings is there. The only other shot you see of him is way off the front. So the peloton on the descent, and everything will melt back together. And that move by Astana, it wasn't so much to attack this climb and split things up. They just want to get things going. And by going up the road like that. They say, well, now it's time, you have to follow us. Everyone was a bit reluctant.
And one rider from Astana in the breakaway already, and that is Lutsenko. So just about everybody on the Astana team, with the exception of Fabio Aru, their team leader, is moving away from the peloton of the yellow jersey with Chris Froome. At least they're trying to. They're closing it down, but this is making the race heat up. One of the big attractions in the last few years at the Tour has been, in the third week, the shortening of stages in the mountains. Like today, down to 146 kilometres, it makes for a lot more action. And if they just continue to roll along, well, it plays into the hands of those, like Bauke Mollema perhaps, who's a little fatigued. If they just take it easy and only race the last climb, then Mollema's got every chance to defend his second place. But if they make the whole stage difficult, then he becomes more susceptible to an attack by Fabio Aru himself on that last climb. And Aru, he doesn't want top 5, he wants top 3.
I really like the way Astana are going about things over the last few days, because they know once the cracks start to appear in some of those other contenders, that's when you've got to make it even harder again to give your guy the opportunity to go on the attack. Like you said, you can't give them an easy ride through to the finish. And this is also playing right into the hands of Richie Porte.
Steve Cummings in the tuck. He likes to be Mr. Efficient. He doesn't waste a drop of energy, Steve Cummings. Arthur Vichot, the French national champion, was the rider that was just in front of him. Grivko now on the front, the big, strong Ukrainian, multiple national time trial champion. He's opening the throttle. This is going to be a fast journey now through the valley to the next climb. And all of a sudden, that breakaway group of 20 riders with an advantage of 4 minutes and 14 seconds, I thought they were going to blow out to a 10-minute lead, and we were going to see a race at the front for the stage and a race further back down the road for the placings in the overall standings. We might see it all come back together, because let's not forget, Robbie, there are time bonuses up for grabs for the stage win. 10 seconds if you win the stage. And there's only 68 seconds separating second down to 6th place. So that 10 seconds could become all important.
Rui Costa there in the break with both his feet out of the pedals, just letting his legs have a bit of a dangle. Lutsenko here at the back, and he would have heard already his team Astana are driving things on the front of the peloton. But they're going from a long way out.
And he's just sitting at the back. So you don't expect to see Lutsenko contribute to that breakaway?
Not a pedal stroke in anger on the front of that bunch for Lutsenko, as the whole Astana team moves to the front. Chris Froome just observing and thinking, this is good, saving my teammates.
And you saw coming to the front as well was Fabio Aru from the Astana team. He's easy to spot in the Astana squad. Different helmet onto the rest of them. He's wearing a wide helmet, which denotes him as the leader, and the speed is on so much, those gaps are appearing. They will come back together, but that's always an indication of just how hot the tempo is.
Great shot from the helicopter then, really showed you the speed of the peloton on this slightly downhill section, maybe 1% gradient downhill, but still going a good 65, 70 kilometres an hour coming off that descent.
The Astana team still taking the race on. Angel Vicioso also towards the front for Katusha, wanting to up the tempo.
Tempers can get a little frayed towards the end of the Tour de France. 3.5 weeks on the road with the same guys. And when you're fatigued, little things can get really annoying and upset you.
Look at the change in the body language now at the front. When they were going over the climb and they heard that the peloton was cruising, it was jovial. They were having a bit of a laugh. There was some conversation happening. But now, as they're on to the Valley Road, they're working turns and they're really trying to hold on to that just inside 4-minute lead that they've got.
And I said about the little things that can irk you towards the end of a grand tour like the Tour de France. The guys in this break will be thinking, what are you doing that for? We've made it into the break and you're just going to try and ruin it for us. Astana are just riding their tactic, doing their thing, which is perfectly acceptable. But you've got to put yourself in the mindset of the riders who are fatigued and got themselves into this break and made that effort. They don't want to see it all brought undone because of one other team's plan. It might not seem logical, but nothing is when you're this tired.
And everybody's got their little prize that they're racing for. In some cases, well, the prize isn't all that small. The prize is significant. And now the conversation, Emil Monard is asking Lutsenko to contribute to the pacemaking. And number 26, Lutsenko, is saying, sorry, I've got responsibilities further back down the road. It's my team that's on the front of the peloton. If I work here, I've got to answer to Alexander Vinokurov.
I think more than asking him to work because he knows the situation, he might be saying something like, why don't you ask your team just to stop, let you go? You try and use anything you possibly can that's to your advantage.
The Roc de Voir, which stands at 853 metres, with an imposing view over the valley from the top. Not the sort of images that a sprinter wants to see.
Be nice descending down into the valley. And that rock, it looks like something you might see in an extreme sports video with those guys in the flying suits.
Well, this man's been flying in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, Rafael Micah. George Bennett, the Kiwi, sitting at the back of the group. He has been contributing, but just enough so he doesn't get spoken to by some of the more experienced men in the break.
And Lutsenko now dropping himself to the back of the group. I think George Bennett sort of saying, just stay last wheel, just stay there. But it was Moinard coming back to talk to Lutsenko that sort of forced him further up in the group. If he stays at the back, the others just concentrate on what they need to do. They'll get on a lot better. Ignore Lutsenko. He's under team orders. Forget he's even there.
But if you try and push him further up into the group, he disrupts that pattern as they roll turns at the front.
What you will get in this group at some point is guys that look for a little bit of a rest and they'll go and try and hide behind Lutsenko. Let him play gatekeeper, the one who's letting riders back in, and someone will just come back and have a bit of a rest. But at the moment, they know it's very important to keep rolling smoothly, everyone doing their work, and the gap at the moment is staying stable.
In the black colours for the Bora Argon 18 team, that's Emmanuel Bookman making his way through. He made his debut in the race last year and he finished in third place on the stage through the Alps that was won by Rafael Micah, who's in the break today. And Dan Martin, the Irishman, finished in second position. 1 kilometre to the intermediate sprint. There's nobody up here racing for the points classification, but just perhaps Michael Matthews will want to pick up a few points, because if he does win this sprint, that will move him from 5th place up into 3rd place. So I'd suggest that Michael Matthews will be trying to take the 20 points on offer. Stands exactly what he's going for, as Thomas de Gent looks like he's challenging to try and collect the points. We'd love the camera at the front as they approach the finish line. It is Michael Matthews with de Gent racing for everything. That Michael Matthews collects the 20 points and moves from 5th place up into 3rd place in the race for green.
Well done, Michael Matthews. Good pick up there. And not quite sure why Thomas de Gent was adamant of getting some points.
He's in 9th position in the race for the green jersey.
Well, there you go. He can move up 2 or 3 places as well.
And that will take him now up into 6th position. So he's made some progress. So that's why he wants the points.
My excuses, Mr. de Gent. Well done.
William Oz, he's reasonably young still, or in terms of racing in the professional peloton, because he was originally a mountain biker. But he showed that he's learning the system pretty quickly. By the way, he acknowledged Michael Matthews and what he was trying to do and said, no, you're fine. You go take those points. Now let's get rolling again.
Looking down at the peloton, Team Astana still on the front. And I'm going to question their tactic a little bit here, because the important thing is not the stage win itself. All right, the 10-second bonus if Aru was to win would be good. But I don't think they should be thinking about so much the stage win, but making the stage hard for the other GC contenders, the ones who look like they're starting to struggle. I question whether this is the place to do it on the flat. I would say they'd be better off cruising on the flat, not worrying about the break, but making it hard on every single climb, because here they're using up a lot of gas of other riders in the team. Luis Sanchez, Grivko, guys riding on the front. I thought they'd be better off making the climbs as hard as possible, making everybody make an effort there, because that is going to sap the energy of the other GC contenders. At the moment, They're just sitting in the slipstream saying, well, this is just making the stage shorter. This is good.
Well, quite obviously, Fabio Aru is very confident. Third place on the stage yesterday in the individual time trial. What was interesting about the time trial yesterday, that's Diego Rosa just switching the bottle over, and Fabio Aru is the rider from Astana with the white helmet on. What was interesting to note yesterday, in the top 3 in the time trial, they all had completely different setups on their bike. It was the full time trial bike for Chris Froome, it was the time trial bike without the disc wheel for Dumoulin, and it was the road bike with the clip-ons for Fabio Aru.
And for Richie Porte.
This is the Lake of Annecy, where there's been an individual time trial here back in 2009. It was the last place where Alberto Contador has won a stage of the Tour de France. But this is one of the prettiest little villages in all of France. And that is a tough competition to get to the top of the table of.
I've got to say, Lac d'Annecy and Annecy itself is my favourite spot in France. I spent a few days there, and it's one of the very few places I've said, if I wasn't living on the Gold Coast, I think I could live here.
It's gorgeous. This is Grivko at the front for Astana. Then it is Vicioso of Katusha, followed by Sanchez. Next in line, Paulo Tirolongo. He won't contribute on the Valley Road. They'll save him for the climb.
As the bunch now comes up towards an intermediate sprint, but all the points are gone, so Astana will just continue to ride through there. Talking about the TT yesterday, Matt, and you just mentioned the different bike choices for different riders, and people say, well, wouldn't the others have been better to choose the same setup as Chris Froome? The riders make the choice based on what they're most comfortable with and what's the most efficient. And you've got to look at, for guys like Chris Froome, Tom Dumoulin, when they climb, they stay in the saddle almost all the time. They're in the seat climbers. Richie Porte, Fabio Aru, they're more out of the seat, up on the pedals. It's very hard to ride that style efficiently on a time trial bike. It actually makes you go slower. So for the toughest part of the course, where it's really going to make or break your TT, win or lose you the most time, you've got to choose the bike that's the best suited to your riding style on that part, and that's why the difference in bikes.
Joaquin Rodriguez is a case in point.
Perfect.
He organised for a change of bikes. He rode the full time trial bike on the first 4 kilometres, which were relatively flat, and then he made that change. And he said against the specialist on that opening couple of kilometres, he could have lost 25 or 30 seconds. The bike change was worth it, and then he's always out of the saddle when he's climbing. There's a look at the village at the other end of Lake Annecy. It really is stunning. Easy access to all the great ski resorts of France. Lots of activities on the water throughout the summer months. Thankfully, the sun has come out and cleared things up, and we cross our fingers and hope that it stays that way. But the humidity is something to battle with.
It can change so quickly here in the mountains, Matt, and the forecast is for thundery showers throughout the day. The riders very lucky up until this point. Dry roads, clear skies, sun. But as they come towards this point, the cloud is a lot heavier around us here. Mont Blanc just over behind us, still shrouded in heavy cloud. So it could open up at any moment, at any turn in the road. They could come around the corner and get drenched.
And how dramatic was it into Andorra? That was a day where at the start of the stage, everybody was battling the heat, and they were putting stockings down their back with ice blocks in them to try and stay cool. And then at the end, they were trying to take cover from the hailstones. And one of the nicest images from that stage, as we head past another part of the fan club for Peter Sagan, one of the really nice images that day was Jellison Pantano, who's in the breakaway today, went across the finish line holding an umbrella that he'd been given by one of the spectators. This is Marcus Burkhardt, trying to stay cool, followed by the former world champion Rui Costa, who was second on that stage up into Andorra behind Tom Dumoulin.
Now, Matt, look at that time gap now, down to 3 minutes 20. It was over 4 minutes, up to 4.5 minutes originally when Astana started to set the pace on the front. The gap stabilised at just a few seconds under 4 minutes off the descent through the valley, through the sprint and along the lake. But now they've hit the climb, it's dropped by 30 to 35 seconds. This group is going to start to panic a little bit, I think, and the better climbers may need to attack the rest.
And the ones that are the obvious candidates are Pantano and Micah, who have attacked together a couple of times before.
But then the difficulty is there's another long valley, and it's about 18 kilometres of valley road after they get off this climb and down the descent. So almost 20 kilometres through the feed until they get to the next climb. So they'd be tempted to go, but they'll want to be able to use the rest of the group all the way through the feed zone up to about kilometre 70, 68, where they hit the category 2 of another Fauclaz, Col de Fauclaz de Cuillege. And that's where they can think about offloading them, and certainly on the Monte de Buisson, the big climb of the day.
This is Angel Vicioso at the front for Katusha. He went across the finish line in first place on a stage at the Giro d'Italia about 14 years ago, when he ended up getting disqualified and Mario Cipollini became the stage winner. This is Sergio Anal, who sits just behind Wout Poels. The rider from Katusha, the lanky rider that's just on the right-hand side, the tallest of the Katusha riders, the man that won the stage on stage 17, Tofino Emerson. He became a father on the first day of this year's Tour de France, but he's yet to see his daughter in person. He's only seen her on Skype so far. No doubt he is really looking forward to getting home. This is Kijalowski. And now just slipping off the back, this is Marcus Burkhardt, who's losing contact with the breakaway group, but they're nearly over the top, 700 metres to go. And Burkhardt will suffer to the top of the climb, and he'll rejoin on the way down.
Can descend Marcus Burkhardt, and a few days ago, he reported his top recorded speed on the stage on a descent, 130 kilometres an hour.
That was in response. Lee Howard had posted 122 k's per hour as his maximum speed. Everybody's jaw dropped, and Marcus Burkhardt responded with, "Were you using your brakes?" And then showed he's at 130.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought he said something to the effect of, "Were your brakes rubbing?"
Yes. Almost at the top. Kijalowski from Tinkoff is leading, and he is leading Rafael Majka, who is at the top of the table in the race for the King of the Mountains classification. It's De Gent who's in second place. At the start of the day, it was an 83-point gap between those two. And Thomas De Gent is fighting for every prize on the road. Villemoz is in the white and blue colours. Into the drops for Thomas De Gent. This is the sort of sprint to the top of this climb where Thomas De Gent would be the favourite. And it would be Rafael Majka. And you see here the little flick of the head from Rafael Majka. Perhaps he's prepared to concede just a couple of points to Thomas De Gent without wasting any energy, because he's got an 83-point advantage to be able to play with. As they go over the top, that's exactly how it plays out. So De Gent, he collects maximum points. But for Rafael Majka, he only concedes 3 to the man who's 83 points behind him. But he saves energy in the process.
Yep. Now, 80 points behind Thomas De Gent, but all Majka has to do is follow him all day long, follow him over each KOM. And I would say then that the competition is pretty much wrapped up for the Polish champion.
Yeah. He's not going to be beat in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. And Emil Monard from BMC is at the back of the group because he knows his teammate, Marcus Burkhardt, is just 100 metres or so behind.
I thought he was at the back of the group because he was struggling. Maybe a bit of both.
He won't lose contact with the group. He'll just stay there and wait because he might not back himself to keep up with Marcus Burkhardt on the way down. But now we're seeing Rafael Majka, who's done this a few times. They've gone over the top, and Majka is a very good descender. And the man that is in second spot, that's Villemoz, who's also pretty quick when it comes to going downhill. Greipel and Howard suffering up the climb. He's a very good climber for a man of his size, Andre Greipel.
So incredibly strong.
Jürgen Roelandts was with him. How reliable as a teammate is Jürgen Roelandts? Not just when it comes to trying to win, when it comes to trying to survive.
He's there everywhere for his team leader, for the leader of the sprint component of the team. And to have a guy like Roelandts with you when you're being dropped to just help pace you and then close that gap down as you come over the top, or even have to chase for a little bit longer than that. Roelandts is your man. Classic specialist, but so strong. ride coming up.
Item number 2 on the to-do list today. Tick. Complete. 3 more to go. And Rafael Micah taking some big risks on the way down. The rider in 3rd position, Villemos, who won a stage last year, when he was picked up by one of the smaller French teams, they didn't have much of a budget. So they went with the money ball strategy. And instead of looking to the amateur ranks who's riding well on the road or onto the track, which is the traditional path, as we just heard the scraping of a peg from one of the motorbikes going around the corner, he was a good mountain biker that never really shown much interest in the road. So Stefan Hurlo, a former yellow jersey wearer at the Tour de France, figured, you come with me and I'm going to make you my protege and see if I can develop you into a good road cyclist. Pretty good investment. They paid him minimum wage for 2 years. It's worked out okay.
So far, so good. Stage winner on the Mur de Bretagne last year, where he just rode away from the rest of the peloton, one solo.
It was a brilliant ride. He got the better of Dan Martin, was in 2nd place. Thomas de Gent in the red colours from Lotto Soudal. He's always up for taking a few risks. He's got a funny breathing action, Villemos, when he's climbing. He looks a bit like a goldfish in the way he opens his mouth, and it's really deliberate and concentrated the way he breathes. And you've got a real theory on breathing when you're climbing, and the exhale being as important as the inhale.
You've got to make sure you force everything out to make sure that when you refill your lungs, it's fresh, oxygenated air. Not a half breath out and still have some of that carbon dioxide loaded air in the lungs. Full breath out, your body will do the rest to get it all in. But it's also about relaxing enough to let it in, breathe all the way down. I always tell people, breathe as if you're trying to breathe all the way down to your belly button.
And it wouldn't hurt to learn singing as a kid to help with that breathing, as breathing is all important for the vocals. And when you watch Villemos, we'll get a chance to later today, have a look at the way he breathes.
I think Richie Port's original sporting life stands him in very good stead as far as breathing techniques going, because he was a swimmer and a triathlete. Now, might have been 10 days, 2 weeks ago now, I was talking about Richie Port, and when he was originally with the Saxo Bank team, and at training camp he amazed his teammates. They were doing some cross-training in the pool, and Richie swam a length underwater. Stuart O'Grady sent me a message. He said, I was there, it was incredible, but it wasn't 50 metres. He turned at the end and started going back. It was 70 metres underwater.
They called him the fish. 34 seconds. Those 3 off the front of the breakaway group have opened up. They're moving quickly down the descent. And the peloton there at 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Astana still leading the charge. Rafael Micah is the one that is going the quickest. The other 2 are just trying to keep up. They're sprinting out of each corner as Rafael Micah is clutching and refreshing on the straight sections and then just using less brakes through the corners, and he's not making any mistakes. A few of the sprinters taking some risks as well, down through the convoy, trying to rejoin the peloton before they hit the valley road. Lee Howard and Andre Greipel, they climbed well to get over the top of that one.
And Marcel Kittel, he is one of those sprinters, along with Dylan Groenewegen, trying to make his way back on. And the good thing is, with it still such a large peloton, they start to single out. It's almost as if the peloton is, in a way, coming back towards you as they single out. Guys on the brakes a lot more. Problem is when you get to the bottom of the descent and everyone's trying to bunch up again, you need to be riding on the flat nearly 80 kilometres an hour just to follow the wheels chasing back on. And that's when you see those splits, because most of the guys here can't ride 80 kilometres an hour on the flat, wound up off the descent. They just cannot keep that pace up.
One of the great images of the Tour de France, one of the great images of bike racing, is watching the peloton snake down through the Alps.
And you see what I mean here at the back. You see the single file line, and then further back in the bunch, you're starting to single out, heavier on the brakes. They're 2 and 3 wide, and as that starts to string out, as they're really slowing down, much heavier on the brakes into the corners, gives guys just off the back the opportunity to close that gap right down, get back in contact with the bunch. It's just that chase off the bottom they got to contend with.
Micah, Villemos and de Gent.
This is what we spoke about earlier, Matt. The better climbers in this group will be getting concerned with the gap coming down and be keen to go on the attack, but wary of this 20-kilometre valley. I'm not so sure Maker is intending to go on with this just with the three of them, but just give the rest of this group a real hurry up. Make sure they ride as fast as they can on this downhill. Get them working together. Leave them a bit further into the stage.
And he hasn't wasted any energy to open the gap. He's just been better technically on the way down. He hasn't had to pedal harder. So now as he hits the valley road, well, he might be able to kick the clutch in ever so slightly, just back it off a few heartbeats, and then the others have to work harder to come back across to him, and he again has saved a bit of energy. Or perhaps he's going to do a Rafael Micah and just go full gas.
And well, at the moment, they're just out of sight of that chasing group. George Bennett, he was sitting at the back. So Bennett not bothering to follow them up and through the KOM and down the descent, just biding his time. Safety in numbers, staying with the biggest part of the group. And I don't imagine for a second they're content to let De Gent and Maker and Villemos ride away at this point. Pretty sure they'll chase them back in just a couple of kilometres. This is the group with Marcel Kittel. This is the back of the peloton. And you see that gap in front of the boys in blue from Ethics Quickstep. Bit of a gap, but there's the back of the peloton. So they're getting back in touch. And they've still got a little way to go on this downhill. About another 2.5 minutes of descending.
This is Guarneri, Giacomo Guarneri, the lead-out man for Alexander Kristoff. And the direct energy rider, who was very ginger on the brakes, that was Fabrice Gendebos, who's had a fall in this year's race, and I think his nerve has been rattled.
And that could be the last he sees of the peloton today, because going down that slowly, on your own, you're not going to be able to cross that gap again. Once you get onto the valley road down here, and the bunch is starting to regroup, he won't be able to close that down. He'll suddenly find himself 2 minutes behind.
And just for your reference at home, Robbie McEwen has delivered that message, shaking his head like a school teacher, not impressed with the students' performance.
But I understand, when you've had a crash, it gets in your head. The last thing you want is another one of those. And it can make guys overly careful, overthink it, and put themselves off the back.
Lutsenko it is, number 26, who continues to just play the role of the policeman with this group. Well, not so much the policeman, but more just the forward advance for the attack to come later on from Astana. Michael Matthews, having integrated the breakaway group. Thomas De Gent pushes on at the front in the red colours. He always looks for the opportunity to split things up. As we've mentioned, each time he's been in the breakaway, every win he's had in his career has been from a breakaway. He is tenacious, and as Robbie always says, stubborn. The stage win to Mont Ventoux, unfortunately for him, it will be overshadowed by the highlights reel that is sure to feature the crash into the motorbike with Richie Porte, Bauke Mollema and Chris Froome, and then Chris Froome taking off on foot. The benefits of having grown up in Kenya and done cross-country running as a school kid.
I bet he never did the cross-country running in carbon-soled bike shoes.
No, I'm sure he didn't.
Putting the new CD shots to the full test on the Mont Ventoux.
Villemos. Just the check across the shoulder to make sure that the others will continue to come through. An interesting point made there, Robbie, that you never see a bad descender amongst the sprinters, but occasionally you do amongst the climbers, as these three now are about to be caught. And what we spoke about before was Rafael Micah. He hasn't wasted any energy. The others have spent some to bring him back. So it's worked out a pretty good move, I think, on the way down. As a guy who had a reputation for being one of the best descenders in the pro peloton, for you, what's the key to getting downhill quickly?
Confidence and desperation.
From a technical aspect.
Still desperation, because it gives you the confidence not to think about the dangers of it, but just doing everything to get back in touch. But technically, it's hard to train descending as you would in a race, because in a race you've got the whole road. When you're out training, you've got to follow the road rules and stick to one side. So it does make it a little bit harder to train apexes, entry, exit, that sort of stuff. But even when you're only using one side of the road, you apply the same sort of principles. And just imagine the road's only half as wide. And a really important thing about descending, like driving a race car, is eyes up. Pick your point. Make sure your entry speed is right. Once you've picked that point, it's eyes up to the next point, to the apex. Once you've lined it to that, you don't keep watching that point till you're there. Your eyes up to the next point, and you look exactly where you want to go, but you don't wait too long to look there. You got to line it. You're on line. Eyes up, next one. Eyes up next. So always drawing a line in front of yourself and looking at where you want to be. Never look at where you don't want to be is the number one rule, and I've said it a number of times. I'll said it again.
Which is effectively the message that came from Nicola Portal. Have your eyesight as far ahead as possible where you want to go. Astana, they're calling it off somewhat here. They're just backing it off a fraction. Vincenzo's having a bit of a smile and a laugh. Vicioso at the front in the red colours for Katusha, asking exactly what he's required to do. One of the older riders on the team. And I wonder if he'll retire at the end of this season alongside Joaquim Rodriguez, who is the reason that he's on the team. Because Vicioso is 2 years older than Rodriguez.
It's getting to be about that time, but more and more these days we see riders still racing approaching 40 years of age. Greg Henderson is another one of those. Jens Voigt, Chris Horner, they both raced into their 40s, 42. I got a month shy of my 40th birthday when I retired. So you see that more and more these days, riders being able to go through to that age. Where go back 15, 20 years, you didn't see many go beyond 35.
This group now working well together. Bookman at the front, the black colours. Tony Galopin was in second wheel there. He was concerned that others from the group weren't going to roll over, even though they were coming through. So he made it sure that they maintained their momentum and went straight back over the top of Bookman. That's a guy who is dedicated to this group surviving. The Anzac Alliance, the Kiwi and the Australian, Matthews and Bennett. Burhan, lunchtime in the valley. This is an important time to eat because it's difficult to do so when you're climbing.
Yeah, you've got to take the opportunities when it's flat, when it's a little more relaxed. But you see at the same time, the group not working smoothly together. A lot of passengers in the group, and they're not getting the leeway that they require. With 85 kilometres to go and just 3 minutes lead, they've got to try and build that up through this valley, because after they get to the end of this valley section, they're onto a Category 2. Immediately then, they start the Or category climb of the Bissan. It's not going to be enough. I think all of this group will get brought back, and that's why Astana is doing this work. Going for the stage win as well, just trying to make the race that little bit harder, a little bit more stressful as well for everybody. It's mental energy they're using. They have to ride better position, think about everything they're doing. It's all part of it in the last week of the Tour de France.
It looked like Astana were going to just ease it off ever so slightly, but now they've sent Grivko to the front once again, and he's got himself leaning over the handlebars in a time trial position. The shoulders are rocking. They're starting to pick it up again, because Grivko's not going to offer them a lot when they're climbing. There's a split in the breakaway, and this has been caused by the lack of cohesion. Kieselowski, Bookman, Sepulveda, Matthews and Roland have missed the splits. They'll rejoin, but they're going to waste some energy in the process. Bennett continues to talk. He wants to make the group work. This is his first Tour de France, but at the very least, George Bennett is going to be on the highlights reel. On the climb to Andorra, when he did the hip and shoulder in a surprise defensive rugby move when we saw a spectator step out in front of him. He had nowhere to go. He didn't have time to turn, and he managed to stay upright. The spectator unfortunately went down, but by all reports was okay.
Well, that's good news here. The spectator was okay, because as George Bennett said in his own words, that spectator got sunny billed. A lot of people who follow rugby say, I found it a bit more Jonah Lomu.
Well, then you'd be really injured, and the spectator may not get up. And may the great man rest in peace. They love him in France, Jonah Lomu. The Astana squad still on the front. They have been the ones in the last couple of days prepared to take the race on, more so than anyone else. A few other teams now milling towards the front. Mikael Shah is the rider from BMC. Van Avermaet is there also for BMC. Caruso, and then there'll be Port.
Taking quite a back seat there in the peloton is Team Sky. It's probably the furthest back we've seen them so far on this Tour de France. But I can guarantee you, once they get over the top of this climb and start the next one, they'll be more present and back to business.
Furthest back we've seen them, third in line. And you're right. Interesting. Kijalowski was about to go to the front of that group and drive the tempo, and Rafael Majka gave him the hand signal. Don't waste energy. As long as Thomas de Gent is on the front, let him keep working. And they're about to go over the top. And again, Rafael Majka is allowing de Gent to collect the points. This is only a Category 2 climb. So again, he just gets 1 point closer.
Do you see the little wave from Thomas de Gent there?
Thank you. Pantano's not interested in those points. He wants another stage win. 15 wins for IM Cycling since they announced that they'll be ending at the conclusion of the season, and they did that in the middle of May. And those wins include a stage at the Giro and a stage here at the Tour. It was a brilliant win by Roger Kluge at the Giro d'Italia this year. Equally as good, if not better, by Hullinson Pantano at the Tour de France, with Rafael Majka in second spot. And a big day in the mountains.
Well, the IM cycling team has had their best performances of their short existence since the team announced that it would be stopping at the end of this year. They've won the Tour of Belgium with Dries Devenens. They won a stage in the Giro. They've won a stage in the Tour. They've been represented in a heap of breakaways. Pressure's on the riders to find a contract for next year.
If you're in one of those cars following the race, you would not want to suffer from motion sickness. It's not a job that you'd hold on to for very long. Once again, the sprinters under pressure. This is Marcel Kittel. One stage win, and it came in a photo finish ahead of Brian Coquard. Grivko is in the blue colours or the turquoise colours of Astana. He's got the yellow glasses on. Alongside him in red is Angel Vicioso, one of the oldest riders in the race. 39 years of age. The oldest is Matteo Tessato at 42. I think Greg Henderson is just about a month older than Angel Vicioso. This is Guarnieri once again losing contact, even with these sprinting pals that he goes head-to-head with on the flat stages. John Degenkolb is also there in the white colours of Giant Alpecin.
Greipel, Seberg, sprinter, lead-out man. Kittel, Kayser, sprinter, lead-out man. Degenkolb was also there.
Marcus Burkhardt making the most of the descents.
Just happens naturally on these stages. Riders of similar abilities end up together and just battle their way on. But those riders that we just saw being dropped, they'll just try and battle on one more time. Get another little free ride through this little bit of valley coming up. Then they can really let go.
And the strategy for Pantano at the back here, since they brought back that three that went off the front with De Gent, Villemos and Majka, he's just been sitting at the back. And now that the lead is out to almost 4 minutes, I get the impression he is conserve until they do get on to the next climb. I thought he might have tried to string them out a little bit down here, but Marcus Burkhardt is taking care of it for him.
He really is trying to string him out down here, taking maximum risk. Burkhardt knows what's coming up, the Or category climb of the Monte de Bissan. And he's thinking, I've got to get away from this group, get a little bit up the road. But he's also got to realise it's a 12.5 kilometre climb, and whatever he does from this point, the gap's never going to get big enough when the likes of Majka and Pantano start to go up a gear and get rid of the dead wood, or what they consider the dead wood in this bunch. He's got a gel in his mouth, little straight section of road, squeeze a bit more in.
After yesterday's stage, he tried to put a bit of pressure on Tom Dumoulin because he was asked about the Olympics. Is that the reference point for the Olympic Games? He said, not really. I think stage 13 was. Tom Dumoulin is the favourite. He's the man to beat in Rio. I'm not sure whether he really believes that, because I think Chris Froome is the man to beat. I think that is part of just trying to deflect the pressure, because he's dealt with a lot of it in July.
He deals with pressure all year long in the build-up as the favourite, the defending champion. Chris Froome's already got an Olympic silver medal from 2012 in the time trial behind Sir Bradley Wiggins. I'm sure he'd rather have a gold one as well. And just quietly, he'll be believing in his chances. Tom Dumoulin, yeah, maybe is the favourite, but not overwhelmingly on the course that they're talking about for Rio.
Yeah, definitely a battle between those two, as they are the standout favourites. The others, well, they're second-tier contenders. And there's a look at the points over that previous climb. So Thomas de Gendt, he gets 2 points closer to Rafael Majka. The gap now is 79 points between those two in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Things are all going according to plan for Rafael Majka, not wasting any energy and just protecting his position. De Gendt collecting the points. It won't change things in those standings. It's risk minimisation for Chris Froome. Giving a little bit of distance. He'll have a teammate behind him as well, just in case anything does happen. So there's someone there to stop automatically. Andre Greipel at this point will be very pleased. They've already regained contact.
It'll be a very long, thin line. So you see Astana pushing the pace on the front, complete single file throughout the peloton. Like I said before, as the bunch comes down this descent, they need to start singling out to be able to take the corners properly. Riders got a break to sort of drop back into line, so the peloton almost drops back towards the sprinters chasing on, regain. There's almost a sprint to stay in contact once they hit the valley floor, but they're still there. That's the important thing.
And once they're through this roundabout, that's the dangerous part of the descent behind them. So another moment where Chris Froome can breathe a slight sigh of relief, but there's no complacency. And Chris Froome, worth noting on the way down there, Robbie, just one rider from Sky in front of him, the rest of the team behind him, just in case anything went wrong. Everybody was around him for support.
And not by chance, everything planned, minutely planned at Team Sky. They know exactly what to do and when. It gives Chris Froome great confidence. He doesn't have to steer anyone. They know what's expected. They're being reminded through the race radios of what they're expected to do. So Chris Froome can concentrate on the one thing he needs to do and just ride to the top with all the rest. Just mark them.
And the team's meticulous preparation came to the fore yesterday. At the individual time trial, Chris Froome thought the best option was a road bike. And the team went through all the numbers. They assessed everything, power outputs, gradients, potential wind, flat sections, etc. And they made the decision for him to ride the time trial bike. And he won by 20 seconds. I'm not sure the bike was the difference at the end because the gap was so big. It was the person on top of it. But that's the level of detail that Team Sky pay to everything in the race. Famous for their phrase, marginal gains.
And also would have taken into consideration the type or the style of climber that Chris Froome is. He stays in the saddle, so it's a good choice to go on the time trial bike. But I'm sure they had it set up just a little bit higher in the front end yesterday than they would for a flat time trial, just to keep him a little bit more upright, so he's got the right angles through his hips to be most efficient on the climb. Maybe not the most efficient on the flat part aerodynamically, but weighing everything up, and that's just what they do at Team Sky.
Breakaway.
Adam Yates, we heard that there was no problem. It was just a mechanical problem. He did come back quickly, and it looks though Majka now wants to try and break the leading group up a little bit early, because the main field, the forward group, is only 2:21 back.
Yes, he's starting to put everybody into difficulty. Michael Matthews there in the dark blue jersey, he slipped off the back. Tony Martin, not a surprise. He's not really one of the big mountain goats in a situation like this. And the other rider slipping away there, 118, Lawrence Tendem. I just spotted him slipping off the back of the group. So the next man to slip off the back of that leading group, Marcus Burkhardt, one of the teammates of Richie Porte. And I think this toughening up of the race today will also suit the Australian as well, because currently he lies 108 off second position and 44 seconds off the third position. And he said and made it very clear that his aim in these final few days is to get to the podium. Little acceleration there from Villermoz. Riding has been selected now to replace Thibaut Pinot at the Olympic Games, and now struggling at the back of the group, Sepulveda, a rider who had hopes of a high finish in the overall standings, but at the start this morning it was almost 2 hours behind. These accelerations now are really starting to rip apart the leading group, but the pressure is still coming on here from Team Astana. That's Luis Leon Sanchez in first position. Now the front from the man who leads the King of the Mountains jersey, Rafael Maica. And it's the Spanish rider on Coffice here, David Navarro, who's gone after him as well. Tony Gallop position, Navarro in third place. Yarlins and Pantana, well, in fourth position there in the white IAM cycling jersey, Phil. He's just sitting there watching affairs. Well, this is Rafa Maica. He's given way on the previous two climbs to Thomas Kent. This one I think he wants. The reason Galopin's getting involved, he's trying to stop anybody gaining points on his man who sits in second place, Thomas Kent. But Maica only needs this, and the King of the Mountains is a done deal, and he's got a little bit of a gap. Well, he's got a little bit of power as well, Phil, because this is not really attack. This is a slow acceleration, but he's gone faster than anybody else. He's thrown down the gauntlet to them and said, look, if you guys feel strong in this breakaway group here, you better try and stick with me if you can. And I think Jens Voigt a little earlier on was just saying how powerful this man looked, and I think what we can think about here is, yes, he has won 3 stage victories in the Tour de France in the past, but he's yet to add one to his account this year, and I'm pretty sure he would like to add a stage victory to his more than likely overall win in the King of the Mountains competition. Well, he won it 2 years ago, and he's going to win it in 2016 for the second time now as he comes up. This is the all-category climb. It gives 25 points to the first rider over the top, and that will take his total to 209 points. Nobody can reach him now. So there we go. And just sitting towards a little bit further back down the group there is number 1, Chris Froome. Alongside him is Adam Yates. Just up over towards the top on the right-hand side, I just spotted Louis Meintjes. He's having a quiet ride here this afternoon. He's quite happily sitting right up there. He moved up yesterday, one of the few riders to actually change his position yesterday in 9th place. He's got a 3-second advantage over Dan Martin, but a 3-minute deficit in the best young rider competition over Adam Yates. 41, Romain Bardet. I wouldn't read too much into him sitting at the back. Now look at this. I have to say that the man on the front there, Luis Leon Sanchez, had done a phenomenal amount of work for Team Astana, which leads me to think that Team Astana are really going to throw caution to the wind on this final climb. They will try to launch a move either with Vincenzo Nibali or Fabio Aru, who sits in 7th place overall. There's Meintjes over on the left-hand side, sitting with many of the other overall contenders. Nairo Quintana in the yellow helmet. You can see him just moving up on the outside. Hardly mentioned the name of Nairo Quintana at all during this afternoon stage. He's been hiding in that main field, just sheltering from the wind, just keeping himself comfortable. Up towards the top of this climb now. Marcus Burkhardt over the top, and he's just about to get picked up by this chasing group with all of the overall contenders in it. And that will be good for Richie Porte. Some assistance. Well, the gap has come down pretty dramatically now. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds. Rafael Maica has continued a little bit over the top there, having picked himself a maximum 25 points up. He's decided to have another little tick on the descent. This is Pierre Roland continuing his pressure at the front. Well, this is a move now with a possible long raid to try and get the first stage victory in this year's Tour de France for France. Pierre Roland makes the move. He's let's just You know, that the acceleration from Pierre Rolland, Phil, it came from the front end of that group, and it really caught everyone unawares as he made the move. He realises as we go over this last little incline that shortly we will start a fairly long descent down towards Saint-Gervais, and the man who's made the big reaction to come across to him is a man who's been on the move many times in this last week of racing, former world champion Rui Costa.
Rui Costa, yes, you're right, a former world champion in conditions like it is just now in rain. So Pierre Rolland, he's made the move. He's over the top of the climb. This is a sort of false, very short descent. Now there's another little stabbing climb, but we're gradually downhill for some way now before the road up to the finish. But there are some nasty little kickers which are going to hurt, and this is one of them. But Costa's got across.
Well, this could be good for a long move by Pierre Rolland. He had hoped and he had dreamed of a top 10 finish in the overall standings at the Tour, but I think he's much too far back, because at the start of the day, Rolland was sitting in 16th place, 22 minutes 51 seconds back.
But he had that horrible crash in the opening week. It really did. We had pictures of him riding along with barely any clothes on him. He's cheap to recover from those injuries. People of Loze, which is where the col gets its name. We came up a road we've never used before. I think Rolland is hurting because he was anxious to get Da Costa in front, and he's only just come across the gap.
Yeah, but I think once they recover, once they get over the top of that little incline, they'll be able to collaborate on the descent, and that could be the important part. So this view from the top of the Col de Cézy is one we've seen many times in the Tour de France. And of course, Cézy, a very well-known ski resort nestled right into the chain, or la chaîne des Aravis. The chaîne des Aravis links Albertville over to the other side of the chain when you go down into the town of La Clusaz, and then the Grand Bornand à la Colombière. We're not going that way today, but this little bit of dampness, Phil, which has actually come to wet the road here, could make it quite precarious on the descent.
Chris Froome's nailed it. He said that the descents are very dangerous today, and this is going to make them even more dangerous. So they've got to be careful. Look at the crowds along the road in Loze. The main peloton, less than 40 riders in that group at the moment.
And looking down at that main peloton, Phil, I can't see any rider in the top 10 in the overall standings who's actually missed out on that acceleration that has been applied on this main field by Team Astana. Everyone from Chris Froome right the way down to 9th and 10th place, Louis Meintjes and Dan Martin, who was very clever and astute, Dan Martin, to put his raincoat on inside of the final kilometre, because trying to put a raincoat on going downhill at 50, 60 miles an hour is not a clever idea.
Right, well, we're showing 1:53 as the gap, but they're saying from the race now it's exactly 2 minutes, so the gap beginning to open a little bit. Well, it looks like it is indeed, but oh dear, this is Rolland.
Well, you know, Phil, just a few moments ago I was saying it was quite precarious when you change road surface. Look at this. It's very, very slippery, and all of a sudden it can't do anything. It's like ice now. Let's bear in mind, a few moments' time, the main field are going to come to that same point.
Well, Pierre Rolland crashed on the same side of his body earlier in the Tour, and it was only moments ago I was telling you how he seemed to recover from those injuries, and it's all going to happen again for him. That's really sad. The Frenchman up again in the front group. His team admired him so much. He's such a strong man, both mentally and physically, and he's crashed like that. But the road has become totally glacial, and if you've got your tyres pumped rock hard, then there's no grip at all.
That is the big problem. Also, the difference between the road surfaces. Here you can see we're looking at a slightly older road surface which has been around for some time, but when you go to that newly laid road surface, that's when it really does start to get treacherous.
We're looking at the original front group here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 riders left of the original breakaway of 20. And Roland, even so, was lying off the back of those riders as he went into that corner, so he was clearly not too happy with his descending.
Now's
This is
the moment.
the yellow jersey group coming down just now.
Well, there you can see the difference.
This
Phil,
is the corner coming up, I think.
Well, there you saw the difference between the changing of the road surface. That's the corner just a little bit further down where there's a gaggle of people over on the right-hand side.
Well, I wouldn't stand there right now. Roland is still there, the peloton going by. And we're all holding our breaths here, I'll be quite honest with you. Roland is remounting his bike and he's going to go back after that peloton. I told you how strong he was, both mentally and physically. His team really admire Pierre.
Well, the amazing thing was when he came across to the squad, well, if I may say this without insulting anyone, a typical Frenchman, Phil, he didn't speak any English at all, and he forced himself at the early training camps to learn English so he could really integrate into the squad, and all of a sudden they found him. Just have a look at how hard he went down there. There was nothing you can... When you go into a situation like that and you lose both wheels, I mean, even the best man in the world can't control that. And look how far he slid.
Well, he's hurting now. Charlie Wagelius is the team director on the left. He's an Englishman born in Finland, and just chatting there, asking him how. He's got under 40 kilometres to go to the finish, but they're not an easy 40 kilometres. One more day in the Alps and then he's home in Paris.
Sometimes, you know, the Tour de France is not a very fair race. So when you've made the move like this, so we go back to the man that he was with a few moments ago, Rui Costa, who is now on his own and really charging downhill here at some pretty impressive speeds. He's hovering between 80 and 85 kilometers now. That's in excess of 50 miles an hour downhill.
Pierre Roland has never not finished a Tour de France, and this is his 8th. Won 2 stages in the Alps, Alpe d'Huez and La Toussuire.
Just look at that though now, Phil. All of a sudden you've got the red and black guard moving into the second row there. That's BMC Racing. The third rider in that line was Richie Porte. Long. Yep.
I tell you, Paul, Richie Porte knows what he has to do, and today he's got to try it, because between him and the place on the podium he needs 1 minute and 8 seconds.
And between, well, that's for second place, he needs 44.
Well,
of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he said, Phil. He's made no bones about the fact that his dream is to get second place.
Yep. Well, here he is. Sad sight. We all feel for him. You've pedalled the best part of the race route. He's only a couple of 100 miles or kilometres from Paris.
Yeah, but Phil, when you've been in the breakaway and it looks as if you're vying for a stage victory psychologically, this is really tough to handle.
Needs a little time to recover. That was a bit of a knock. And the guy taking the pictures missed the shot because he jumped out the way. 3 times in the top 10 during his 8 tours, Pierre Roland. Oh, look at this now down here. Oh, goodness me. Now, that's a nasty piece of slick road as well. It's Rui Costa.
You see how he's using so much of the road, picking across, using the apex. In fact, just slackening off his shoes a fraction there as he starts to make good lines. You were right a little earlier on to talk about the tyre pressure on a day like this, but I think everybody realised there was a big threat on a day like this of having a rainy finish to the stage. Well, I've got approximately a 35-second advantage for Rui Costa over the remnants of his breakaway group, which, just looking a little bit further up, contains Villermoz of France, Pantano, who is about 2 riders from the back, Maika, Navarro, Armel Moinard, the rider from BMC, he's in here, but I think he will have further thoughts later on in the afternoon. Sepulveda managed to get back. George Bennett, I think, is still in this group. Kizalowski, Lutsenko and Tony Galopin. But 35 seconds for Rui Costa. This part of the road he will know well, Phil, because the Tour de France has zigzagged over these climbs, the Chaîne des Aravis, any which way you want over the last few years.
Just wondering now how Chris Froome is feeling on this. Is his worst nightmare. Look at this now as Rui da Costa goes around that corner, uses the full road, doesn't want to lean that bike over too much.
Well, I tell you what, he's doing a pretty impressive job because he's actually extending his advantage. It's now around about 40 seconds over the chasers, and he's taking a lot of risks. And he's got nothing to lose, Phil, from taking the risks on the descent like this, because if he can stretch his advantage over the main peloton, then he starts to be able to dream about a stage victory.
These conditions are really nasty now, and Astana is going to stretch everybody in the race. They haven't eased up at all here. The cloud's obviously spinning around. Not always wet, but it is at this moment in time. And I hadn't noticed in commentary, but the rain has actually started on the finishing line now as well.
Well, it had been promised. I had been watching the weather forecast over the last couple of hours, and it did say that in the latter part of the afternoon the rain would start to pick up. More scary is the fact that there's a possibility of heavy electric and thunderstorms towards the latter part of the afternoon. But hopefully the riders will get themselves in safely to Saint-Gervais in this final climb up here to La Betex, which at the beginning is very, very narrow, and it'll be a big fight to position yourselves to be at the front for the start of the climb.
They're saying 40 seconds. Da Costa is ahead of that chase. We're looking at the peloton. I think we should stay here for a while, because this is where the race to win the Tour de France is, and these conditions are lethal just now. Minute 43. See the amount of distance each rider's putting between the rider in front of him now, just in case he slides out.
Well, that's George Bennett. I was looking for him a little while ago in the yellow jersey of Lotto Jumbo. And I have to say, I think he's had a very good Tour de France, especially in the latter part of the Tour, while we rejoin, as if by the magic of television, the man who leads this race, Rui Costa.
Minute 40, they're saying, to this bunch here, to the leader. So they're only a minute behind that 10-man chase group.
Just get a quick glimpse, Phil, of the speed of Rui Costa. Every time it straightens out, he pushes it back up to 80 kilometers an hour.
And the chasers, I saw 100 come up there.
A little bit of damage now, and important on days like this. Race radio saying there's another crash at the back there, and also going down. I just spotted there briefly number 126, and that was Sebastian Reichenbach. Now, he's high up in the overall standings. He crashed there with a teammate. Well, this is what a lot of the contenders were concerned about, the rain coming down in the Alps, and it can turn the race upside down. But all of a sudden, we've got a situation where two of the workers on Team Astana have opened up a big gap over the rest of the main field. Following them are two riders from BMC Racing. Richie Porte. Well, Porte has got a problem as well. They're calling over race radio for Richie Porte's team car to come forward. Well, it looked as if he might have been. Well, that came back to Richie Porte very quickly there, but let's have a quick look. But just what happened here. Over there on the right-hand side, that is the crash involving the two riders from Française de Jeu. And they went down pretty hard there. Reichenbach is one of the riders who went down. And I didn't see exactly what happened to Richie Porte, although we did hear it announced on race radio. And he has got 2 or 3 teammates in that group in front. So having a quick look at him here, I can't see any ripped jersey. So it may well be that he was in fact just delayed by that crash a few moments ago. So much happening here on this stage with 30 kilometers to go.
Well, Richie Porte caught in that crash as the rain has become quite torrential just at this minute in time.
Yes, I think he was actually delayed by the crash, Phil, of the two riders from FDJ. It did seem to me as if he stopped at the side of the road, but now he's got the advantage of having a couple of teammates there with him, so they should be able to slow down and pace him back into this group.
Welcome to the like a coffee slide. He's the only one in the front group. Pantano doesn't care who it is. We'll go and have a look. But I think it was Daniel Navarro here. Remember, we still have Rui da Costa up front. Well, now he's hoping to be joined no Spanish stage wins this year yet.
He's also made this move, I think, Phil, because he could sense the moment when the yellow jersey group was about to catch the remnants of the breakaway group, but he's still got to try and bridge a 1 minute gap to Rui Costa.
Costa, 1 minute back is that group we were looking at. 16 seconds behind them as he's moved off the front is now the peloton. And they're trying to stay clear of Richie Porte, and there the breakaway's been swamped because there's Micah and Jorgensen Pantano. Chris Froome's gone by. They're all looking to get back in. Look at that, Micah's still got some legs.
But look how many teammates that Nairo Quintana has in that group as well, Phil. He's still got 3 very good teammates up alongside him. One of those, of course, Alejandro Valverde. Daryl Impey now is turning the books around, but a little bit further back, here is Richie Porte. He's managed to get into the team cars. But I take my hat off, Phil, to Craig Van Avermaet this afternoon, because there he is, number 98. He really has survived on a day like this, because he's not in the past been really reputed for being one of the best climbers that Belgium's produced.
He's a big team man. He held the yellow for 3 days. He won a stage, and now his job is to get 91 back into that pack. And what he does after that, nobody will worry about. But there up the corner is the back of that pack.
In front of Richie Porte there was Damiano Caruso, the Italian rider on BMC. And it's funny how the weather conditions are. It's a little bit interspersed, but certainly I can see plenty of umbrellas on the finishing line and plenty of waterproof coats being put on.
Looking down on the BMC chase train. Final kick for the line. And it's Porte himself now who is going to sprint on, and he'll say, thanks, lads. They're back.
Well, you know, I'm not sure that there'll be that much of a problem for Richie Porte, because he wasn't actually involved in the accident. He was delayed by the accident, and he used his teammates to pace him back into this group. No panic at all for him, I don't think. The final climb will tell, but I think he's just got so much experience that something like that will not rattle the foundations of an attack later on from Richie Porte. He's shown great form in this last few days, and these look at these corners. They really are very tricky. He is prepared to take all of the risks. The little indicator there, 3 kilometers to the start of the climb now for Rui Costa. And the manager of Team Sky, Dave Brailsford, has said, as everybody knows, there's still 2 days to go in this Tour de France. Chris Froome feels in a strong position, but, you know, on a day like this with weather conditions and road conditions like this, Phil, anything could happen.
And it has. We've seen so many riders fall off, and we've seen the abandon of Tom Dumoulin and Michael Sherrill. This is the rider cautiously... there's another crash. Oh, that is a nasty fall. 3 riders hitting the deck there.
Well, I'm hearing that Navarro is one of the riders who went down. Let's just have a look at this as we come into the corner. As I told you, these were tricky corners. That looks to me as if the first rider to go down was Eduardo Sepulveda, the Argentinian rider. On the far side, that's Navarro, the rider in the red jersey, and the race doctor is there up alongside him. That's Danny Navarro. Oh, there's another rider gone off the road too there. And it was a rider from Trek Segafredo. Now look, straight on, he just can't control his machine. He's got the back wheel locked up, and he just managed to stop before he exited the route. Wow.
Well, we are hearing the Froome has crashed. We have got no pictures yet. And there he is on the road. Froome has fallen.
Well, this is the one thing that everybody who leads a race like the Tour de France has to be afraid of, and he's going to, in fact, his bike must be seriously damaged because he's swapping machines with a teammate and he's off riding again.
And look at his team all around him as they came round. They were amazed, but they're so cleverly drilled, they knew exactly what to do. Froome away and the peloton is still descending.
Well, it's all about, Phil, having a plan. And let's have a quick look and the number of right. Look at that. You see, Phil, and you put a little bit of moisture on it, it's almost impossible to hold your bike upright.
Well, I'm not sure, but I think that was Dario Aru with him. It looked like a 7 Aru.
Well, I'm hearing that Bardet has in fact come out of the front of the main field as well now to join his teammate Cherel. He's in second wheel there as they start to go through Domoncy. Now, this is the opposite way that they were racing yesterday. Wow.
Well, we think that was Vincenzo Nibali who crashed with Chris Froome at that time. Froome is now not on his bike. I think he's on the bike of Mikel Nieve here as he's gone back up to his teammates.
Well, let's put it into perspective a little bit, Phil. He's got 3 minutes 52 seconds at the start of the day over Bauke Mollema, who's also had at least one crash on that descent, and I'm not getting any information on the position of Bauke Mollema.
Yeah.
And I think he, in fact, was involved in a second accident going around one of the corners. Here we go. Well, it looks as if that could have been Bauke Mollema there, because that was a couple of riders from Trek Segafredo.
Well, the rain has had its say in the Tour de France today. This man is still clear. 10 kilometres to go for Rui Ferreira da Costa. Give him his full name. Hey, there is the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. He fell heavily on his side there. He's up against it, but he's got time to climb onto the podium in Paris.
Sad to hear, Phil. I'm just hearing that the abandon has happened there. As we see this little move of Bardet almost touching the wheel of his teammate in front. I'm just hearing that Danny Navarro has had to abandon because of that accident on the descent of the Côte de Domoncy.
Well, he did look injured, and the doctors stayed a while with him, so they've obviously pulled him from the race. Let's hope he's okay. As the peloton is trying desperately to get itself together. The boys of Sky are here. Number 5 is Nieve.
Well, it was Kirienka doing a big turn on the front to pull Chris Froome back into this group. The other rider up there was the faithful lieutenant at Wout Poels. They're just about to make the junction, Phil, before the start of this climb. The maillot jaune, the yellow jersey of Chris Froome, is seriously ripped up.
We're looking at the youngster here, Romain Bardet. He is gaining most today as he goes out onto this stage sitting in 5th place. And he's gaining time now because Chris Froome is occupied trying to rejoin that very select chase group. Of the other riders overall, Yates, Quintana, Bardet, Mollema, they are spread out behind, but I don't think they're all together right now.
No, still the race situation. One leader is Rui Costa, but at just 41 seconds behind him is Romain Bardet, who is the Frenchman, Phil, who was also dreaming at the start of the day of a podium position.
Well, we're looking at the faithful team gathering around the Queen Bee there, because the yellow jersey may be damaged, but it's certainly full of fight, and there's no doubt about that. But the question is, where is number 61, Bauke Mollema? Because I thought I saw him go through the bushes.
I'm pretty sure it was him. He is currently off the back.
Adam Yates is here.
Yeah, up to the left-hand side in the white jersey, number 209. He looks reasonably comfortable. Slipping back, I noticed Steph Clement, the former Dutch national time trial champion. The question mark is, can Chris Froome, in this chaos at the moment, even risk changing machines and getting back onto his own machine when the team car eventually manages to catch up with him?
Well, Froome there, he always looks as though he's under pressure, and he rarely is, but he has that bowed approach to riding his bike. The team have been simply fantastic for him today. We're getting on to the last climb of the day, remember, which takes us up to 1,372 metres, and the finish.
Well, I'm hearing now, Phil, that Romain Bardet is just 30 seconds off the lone leader, Rui Costa. So the French could be getting not only a stage victory out of today's stage, but they could also be getting a man climbing onto the podium.
Well, he deserves it because he's been a most aggressive rider in this bike race, and he said this morning before the start he'll look for an opportunity and he'll go for it. Well, the opportunity fell in his lap in the rain. There he is.
And he is a very good bike handler. We've seen it on a number of occasions, and maybe a little brash on occasions too, when he's taken advantage of the downhill parts of the course. And the fact that he's just passing the team curve there of Rui Costa indicates that very shortly he will have the former world champion from Portugal well in his sights.
He sits 4:57 behind Froome. Of course, he's gaining some of that, but Froome won't be too worried about that at the moment. But people like Richie Porte will be certainly worried. Nairo Quintana, they stand to lose their places tonight to this man.
Well, they certainly do, but let's think about Froome. He's got a 4-minute and 16-second advantage over Adam Yates, and for the moment I'm still getting information that Bauke Mollema is off the back of this yellow jersey group. Froome, I'm sure, Phil, would like to have his team car come back up alongside him and try and get back onto his own machine.
Just 5 miles left to end this stage, 8.7 kilometres. That's all that's left. The cars in regularly aren't supposed to go near the riders on the climb now. It's a climb to the finish. You can't feed them, touch them, speak to them. It's now man for man. Well, Costa on the front.
Sorry, Phil, there was that confirmation. It's 29 seconds separating these two riders. Last year, Romain Bardet was a joint leader of his squad, and this year he came as the sole leader for AG2R. Just there, you can see him just in the background. I caught a quick glimpse of the AG2R jersey. He has now got Rui Costa well in his sights.
He's seen his chance and he's taken it. It's not a question of attacking when there's a man down. This has been a one-for-all race today, and Bardet has ridden it brilliantly. Mike is still in the mix here, despite that long breakaway. Still looking very cool at the back, number 37.
Well, Froome, you can never really tell when you look at his number 6 got his hand up. And looks like the way
with his bike, and time comes it. Then he's just holding that wheel in front and hoping it goes the right way. Dodging through the on-stay rider there is Alvaro Gonzalez de Galdeano. This is Robbie Hunter. That looks like Kretskins.
Michael Bogard on the far side, keeping himself to the front end of the main field.
Well, another man, you know, who could win this race. He's got terrific form. Servaes Knaven, former champion of the Netherlands. These are hard-working men now, and that gap on the top of your picture keeps coming down at 7 minutes 57. They're inside 8.
Everyone getting nervous now because I don't really feel the Klausberg is a climb where it will make very much decision. It's a fairly easy climb in terms of professional cycling, but everybody wants to be in the first 40 or 50 places for the Konokterberg, which is a very difficult steep climb, which runs out at around about 14%. Hunter, I don't think, will be going too far towards the finish line in Meribeke today because he's doing an awful lot of work. You can see now the pink and blue jerseys of Team Lamprey moving up to the front, and maybe a chance for the Italian rider Maximilian Chandri to get a good performance in what he admitted to me this morning is probably going to be his last Tour of Flanders, but he did that 2 years ago.
But also, Paul, watch out for Cipollini again. He's come forward with a couple of teammates at a time when he expects the race to crack, and make sure he's in the right position. He's not very far off the nose of this peloton, and that indicates to me that Mario Cipollini is looking for a result today. You can see him tucked in with 2 teammates around him in the Domina Vacanzi squad, the boys with the striped zebra kit on, as Hunter just knows all about zebras where he comes from in South Africa, but he is now just driving on the front. Clearly committing suicide as far as winning the race goes. Not his job today, even though he packs a sprint. He's there to hold this race at a high speed and try and stop too much change of movement behind, and hopefully will crack the field.
Well, let's not discount Mario Cipollini completely either,
No.
Phil, as a sprinter, because he finished 9th in this race last year with the World Cup leaders jersey on his shoulders after winning of course, Milan-San Remo at the start of last season, then going on to win Ghent-Wevelgem in probably what was one of his most attacking races ever of his career. I think he enjoys these races in Belgium. He enjoys the adulation of the crowd, because when he comes here, they are so dedicated to supporting the man who has to be one of the most flamboyant characters the sport has had in the last 10 or 15 years. And his bus at the start this morning was pretty discreet, wasn't it?
It was, and I don't know anybody that actually dislikes Mario Cipollini. They admire him immensely.
Except the Union Cycliste International.
Well, they know. He just keeps on pushing the rules to the limit, but of course he gets rewarded by a heavy fine and a lot of publicity.
Well, there was quite a good April Fool's joke out on the internet on the 1st of April this year. They said that the white shorts have been banned, and would have been an awful big earner, I think, for the Union Cycliste International, the governing body, because I don't think Cipollini would have listened to that if the rule had been instigated, would he?
Not at all. These are the leaders of the peloton now as they climb up the Clashberg. This might cause a change of leadership. Bramati heading the charge. Robbie Hunter just dropped back slightly on the climb, but not too far. Cipollini wise to try and stay in position, but he'll find the climb a little bit of a struggle. It's quite steep, this climb, and it's just over a kilometre long.
Marco Cipollini moving up into about 5th position on the right-hand side there in the pink and blue jersey of Lampre. Mario Cipollini very close to the front, keeping himself up to the front and out of danger. Bramati as well, Phil, is doing an excellent job here for the team, and this is what it looks like at the back end of the main field. This is Mondini wearing number 98, and you can see one or two riders starting to feel the pressure of what has been a fairly fast race so far, just a shade inside of 40 kilometres an hour average.
Well, they've hung on just about as they get over the top of the climb, quickly shift up the gears and hook on to the back of the peloton, which might ease down a little bit. We're on towards the Konokterberg next. 7:13 is the gap.
There's a chance now, once you get over the top of this climb here, the Mont de l'Enclos or the Kleisberg, it's completely flat for about 150 metres, and then you plunge off on what is quite a steep and fast descent. As you can see, the acceleration happening here. They've then got around about 5 or 6 kilometres to the next climb, and there'll be, I think, a general acceleration will start towards the bottom of the Konokterberg, which comes up next, the 5th climb of the day, because then you plunge off the Konokterberg, and it's the start of what I've always regarded as being the first real strategic point of this bike race, the Eau de Quaremont, the Old Quaremont.
88 kilometres to go, 55 miles to the finish. All of the climbs that matter are now in this sector, and they're going to come thick and fast, and this big peloton soon is going to become a man-o-man battlefront, I think. 7-11. It's a pretty famous name in the old days, wasn't it?
Reminds me of a bike racing team they had from the United States.
Yeah, once rode the Tour de France.
I was reading some stuff just recently about Steve Bauer taking part in the World Championships again, but that was through the organisation of the World Championships, which are going to be in Canada towards the end of the season. It'd be nice to see Steve Bauer again. He was a great bike rider. He loved these classics as well. Always got himself psyched up for races like the Tour of Flanders, and was so very close to winning Paris-Roubaix by finishing second in what has to have been probably the closest of margins.
Yeah, centimetre. Well, unfortunately, everybody remembers the winner. Who did win it?
I think it was a bloke by the name of Eddie Planckaert.
There you go.
Famous cycling name. Kop van der Weegstrijd, these are the 4 leaders now on the start of the Konokterberg. Jackie Durand, Michael Riesch, Thomas Loze and Van Kooi. Very happy to get himself some publicity for his team. That's the average grade, 8.16% the Konokterberg. It's over a kilometre. And you can see at the steepest part there is as it gets up towards the summit. This is one of those horrible climbs that seems to get steeper as it gets towards the top, and it's 13% the gradient at the top end of the climb. Not a very pleasant one.
It's only been a regular in the Tour of Flanders since 1998. 1997 rather. We started, that was the first time we've ever climbed it, and this will be the 7th time they've gone up it. But these 4 boys are seeing their lead crumble now. It's down to 7 minutes. Not quite as sharp on the climb as the drivers behind, but the weather a lot kinder just now. Not so much sun, but it's The wind doesn't look to be as strong as it was down at Bruges.
At least it's not wet, because that's one thing these bike riders really do hate at this early part of the season, because if it rains in conditions like this, it is absolutely glacial. Interesting thing about this climb is once you get to the summit and you take a left-hand turn, you turn into a road called the Ronde van Vlaanderenstraat, Tour of Flanders Street. Take a left turn, then drop away, and they're around about 500 meters from the summit of the old Quaremont, but they have to drop off this hill where we are just now, go through the town in the bottom, and then set themselves up for the old Quaremont. These guys will survive to the old Quaremont, but I would think by the time they get to the top there, their advantage is not going to be very much more than the 3-minute mark.
Well, they've been halved. The lead has been halved now from what they had a couple of hours ago. Inside 7 minutes now. The race themselves, it's a bit of an in-battle back there. They're not really chasing these four down. They'll come automatically. It's a battle between the men who want a whole position at the front of the peloton when they're on these very narrow roads, because a puncture, a crash, a mass pile-up, and you could be on the defensive for quite a few kilometres.
Bit fishy there, isn't it? Seeing Van der Kooi on the back.
Yes. Yeah, stop carping on. Right. 4 riders clear for most of the race today, and we're into the last 55 miles. Thomas Loze, who's quite a good friend of ours actually. Thomas, he's been around a long time. We've seen him race a long amateur career before he turned pro. Since he's become a pro, he's become a road rider. He was basically a track rider. Very good time trialist, as he's proving today, I suppose, one way and another. But it's good to see somebody from Team Coast now getting themselves in front of the television cameras, because their season has not been good. They were suspended before they even started because some riders hadn't been paid, money hadn't been lodged, etc. Ulrich still can't race for them because his money has not been lodged as a guarantee, and I'm very doubtful, in fact, if Jan will finish up racing for this team. Gone last weekend was the man who was expected to do wonders for them, Alex Zülle. He's now gone over to Phonak, and that'll be the first time indeed that Alex ever ridden on a Swiss team. And he's full of confidence too. He's got great morale, but he's left behind a team with very poor morale.
In fact, a lot of the riders very upset by the movement there of Alex Zülle, because he was almost the captain on the road, wasn't he? He was the man who kept the team together, gave them direction. You can see the acceleration here, this group splitting somewhat. Jackie Durand going off the back here. It's the two Germans opening up the advantage, and Van der Kooi going off the back of the group here with Jackie Durand. I would think they will still manage to survive and accelerate. Durand is a very experienced professional bike rider and realizes that as that climb got very steep towards the summit, he could just knock off a little bit, recuperate somewhat, and accelerate as we go back now into the province of Eastern Flanders.
Well, there's the gap, 2 on 2. The Germans versus the rest, as Lisa and Rick, they've also raced as amateurs on the same team. And Michael Rick isn't a bad climber. He's not a man we think of as being a tough mountain climber. He is a big rider. But I remember winning a stage of the old Tour of South Africa, right up in the north of the country, where they are serious mountain passes. And he had a bad time early on, and he crossed the gap after a flat tyre, caught the leaders on a finishing climb in a town called Graaskop, and he actually won the stage at the top of the mountain. There's a very good pancake house up there as well, Paul, should you ever find yourself in the northern part of South Africa.
Well, it's a long way from the eastern part of Africa, but you never know. If I get a long bike ride in one day, I might be able to get down there. Very sensible tactical move there, Phil, I think, by the two Germans, realizing still with 86 kilometers to go, they didn't want to clear off on their own and try and build up an advantage on the two chasers. The most important thing in a long raid like this is to keep as many numbers as possible together, because even though Jackie Durand had a hard time on the Knokterberg there, once it levels out, a guy like him has got such a big engine that he can contribute to the success of the breakaway. This is the front end of the main field right now. They are just beginning the Knokterberg, and it's still Rabobank. Mark Wouters moving himself up into second position there. You can be sure that Oscar Freire is not too far away. Look at Bettini. Excuse me, boys, coming by, coming by. He wants to ride near the front end of the main field. You see,
the ditch. Everybody
realizes how important it is on these kind of events to ride in the first 15, 20 places. A very nervous bike race like this, you're on the brakes for almost the whole day, and it's in races like this that in the past some riders have managed to wear out a complete set of brake blocks.
So Rabobank still there, the World Cup holder, winner of Milan-San Remo, has fought his way through. Watch out for the boys on the right, the Français de Jeu. They're not just there to defend for Jackie Giron, because they are on a terrific high this year. They've had a wonderful start to the year. They won a place in the Tour de France. I think it's almost automatic now. And there is one good British rider who's on terrific morale at the moment, Bradley Wiggins, riding in this event here. And it wouldn't surprise me if Brad gets himself a good result. They have a good sprinter in Baden Cook. Should he get to the finish, he could handle himself better than most in the sprint finish.
He's certainly good at his second attempt here at Flanders, and he actually said to me before the start this morning, Phil, that he felt it was so important having started the bike race last year, because he learned an awful lot about where to be, how to position himself, and of course Belgium very close to his heart, because he spent a lot of his early years here in this part of the world. Quick step now for Phil. I see starting to make more of a move to the front, more of a presence as we get closer to the old Quaremont. Frank Vandenbroek in the third or fourth line of riders there with a little goatee beard. You can see just in the middle of the screen. Interesting to see Fassa Bortolo moving one or two riders to the front. I'm surprised to see Michele Bartoli taking part in the bike race here, because he's had a very difficult start to the season, and good to see that former winner also back in the saddle and riding comfortably. Bettini there in the white jersey, winner of the World Cup last year and leader. What a great bike rider, what a great 2 years he's had.
Well, he had, and of course Bartoli was at one stage his mentor. He was the first man he telephoned when he won his first Liège-Bastogne-Liège to tell him he'd won. His life at the back here now. This is Paolini here. They've got the nice little block on. The Rabobank boys are controlling this race just now to their own speed on the climb. As Luca Paolini, well, he's got in front, but he's got a flat tyre.
Well, he's obviously got that information back to the team management there, and good man. He was the man who really set the win up for Paolo Bettini earlier in the season in Milano-San Remo. And Bettini has said about that afterwards, he said, well, basically he did for me what I did for Michele Bartoli for many years, so watch out for him when it's his turn to come round and ride at the front end of the main field.
Well, he just took something out of his front wheel there. Third in Milan-San Remo, gone back in the pack.
Well, this is why you should not ride at the back end of the main field in the Tour of Flanders. Well, that's why it's such a big battle to ride up at the front, and again it's González de Galdeano. Not very much fun here, is he?
And Tom Stremic from the Lambau Credit is the rider on the right in the red. But they're back in the fray here. Although once they get over the top of one of these next few hills, they won't get back, because they'll find that the front group of 20-30 riders should be on the way. I think we just saw Julian Dean at the back. He rides for CSC now, was with US Postal, and comes up with the odd good result. He's a very fast finisher. Bettini riding a brilliant race at the moment. The way he's come back to the front of the pack when it matters shows a man with tremendous confidence. Number 51, good number to have on as well. And sitting off to the left there, Bernard Eistel is the FDJ rider.
Well, it's amazing how comfortable Paolo Bettini looks there, Phil. In the second row, he's out of the saddle, looking very comfortable, dancing on the pedals right now. I'm still impressed by the numbers at the front end of Rabobank. González de Galdeano, 215 there, again in difficulty. But this is probably going to be one of the last times there's such a dramatic compression of riders at the back end of the main field, because next up is going to be the old Quaremont. Look at this, having to stop at the side of the road. Not seen this in the Tour of Flanders for some time.
This is Julian Dean, number 3 on the right. Well, anybody who's raced in Belgium has been in this position in these classic bike races, whether they're amateur or professional, because this happens in every race that goes onto these narrow roads. The strong men stay at the front, and they hold their positions on the build-up to the climbs, because they know what's going to happen on the climbs. 5:56 is the gap, 83 kilometres to go, just over 50 miles. And still Rabobank have the advantage. Here's a flashback. Julian Dean is off to the right of our picture, number 3 there. 126 is Tom Stremic.
And this is why you have to ride at the front. Look at this acceleration now coming from Rabobank. They had an easier climb than the guys at the back, because they were able to control the tempo and set the pace that they wanted to. This is the Ronde van Vlaanderenstraat that they're turning onto right now. They'll drop off the top here of the climb of Kruisbergen, down into the village below, around about 5 kilometers, and they will start the ascent of the Haut de Quaremont. The acceleration there, you see how all of a sudden how the main field has been put into difficulty, and the reason they're doing this right now is to make sure that anybody who's lost any time on the Konocterberg there doesn't have an easy ride to the front end of the main field for the Old Quaremont.
Well, as we come up towards the Old Quaremont, I think we'll see this breakaway split here. If the two Germans show the same strength, because this is a lot longer at 2.2 kilometers. As you can see, it goes up 91 meters above sea level. This is given 4 stars. Average gradient just over 4%. Steepest of 13. In fact, this climb roll has been in every Tour of Flanders since 1974. An old favourite. We even train over it ourselves in the one day off that we get in the week.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'll be training over it this year, Phil. In fact, I don't think I'm going to be on a bike for a couple of months. But it certainly is a very important part of many of the major bike races in this part of Belgium. You can see there just a quick indication, 1,500 meters of cobblestones. They're onto the cobblestones here right now. It's a climb that is used by Kern, Brussels, Kern, Het Volt, Tour of Flanders. All the big bike races come here, and it is, to me, the first strategic point. This first part of the climb that we're looking at right now is the steepest part of the whole climb at around about 11%. But what I've always found is the hardest part of this climb is the long false flat afterwards of around about 1.5 kilometers. And look at the acceleration there. Thomas Liese dancing out of the pedals. Jackie Durand looking for a bit of respite on the small smooth section there, but the main field will be coming up here in about 6 minutes and 9 seconds time.
Well, Jackie tackled this climb back in 1992 when he was the last Frenchman to win this race, so he knows what it's all about. But the crowd weren't so orderly in those days, because they put barriers down these climbs now to try and stop them narrowing the road down. So we go up towards the top, Cafe on the right, but straight on for the riders. And well, the two Germans, Rich and Liese, are going clear again. They might get a gap long enough to push on this time, as it's a little bit easier just now. Well, you wouldn't think so.
Well, they're coming to the real tough part of the course right now, because once they survive over the summit here of the Haut de Quaremont, which I am absolutely certain they will do right now, they've got the Paterberg, the Koppenberg, the new Koppenberg, which was brought back into the bike race last year, and then the first of 3 brand new climbs that have been put into the Tour of Flanders this year, the Steenbeekdries, which although only 700 meters in length, is a very steep and nasty climb. These two guys were put into difficulty before, and judging by the gap starting to appear, Phil, they may have a more difficult time reintegrating the front end of the bike race. This is the panic at the back end now, everybody battling, and Bettini's had a problem, and that is Bettini, and what a blow, Phil. Look at this. Bettini has a front wheel puncture. He doesn't want the wheel from the neutral service. He wants the car of his own team to put the wheel in there, and that's going to give him a hard ride now to try and get back up right before the Old Quaremont.
Well, that's the look at the draw. He was in such a good position. His hand is up as he makes the right-hand turn. Now he's got to get up to the Quaremont, and that's his best chance. But what he's going to find there, Paul, is an awful lot of riders stopping on that climb. It's going to be a tough return now for Bettini. Now, we believe he wasn't the man for the race to win for the team. We think that's Johan Museeuw. Bettini was going to be the sort of super domestique, but that is a very strong man off the front of this bunch.
And he did notice that none of the teams stopped back for him right now, because this is a very critical part of the bike race. We're just coming up to the Old Quaremont. You can see the accelerations. Everybody's looking for their teammates right now, trying to move forward. That's Van den Broek in about 3rd position right now. You can tell the style, the way the top end of his body is just moving along, trying to keep himself right at the front end of the main field. Cofidis accelerating down the outside. That was Philippe Gaumont. This is Ivanov on the front right now, looking for his man Ivan Basso.
Ooh, and there's a lot of trouble here.
Oh, they're taking risks.
Just about held on. I thought he was going there.
It's Joe Plancart going around that corner. He knows how to get himself into a good position. It's going to be very difficult now, Phil. We're actually in the first kilometres of the Old Quaremont. This is the tarmac section that wiggles across the roads, and this is the part where it's going to be so difficult now for Paolo Bettini to move forward, because as you can see, there are about 4 bike riders across the width of the road. Look at Plancart going round there. Oh, and that one year they're going to have to take that pylon out of the way, because in fact there was a crash there. I think it was Serpellini went down just in the corner.
There's O'Grady feeling his way through. He's been stopped. You're right, somebody went down. It was a Rabobank, I think. There's still somebody down there, but he's out of sight of our helicopter, so we can't help you as to who it was at the moment. Anyway, but they've got round it, dodgily so, at 5 minutes 4 seconds to the 4 leaders, who are now 2 by 2. And
Cipollini moving up on the right-hand side.
Indicating to me he's really on form today. He's riding this race very cleverly indeed. Not hitting the front, but always in the right place when he knows it matters.
Well, that's the important thing. And one man we haven't seen yet is Johan Museeuw, but in recent past, that's the way he's ridden the Tour of Flanders. He'll be in there somewhere in the first 15 to 20 places waiting. The other man that I haven't seen too much of right now, and I'm absolutely certain is still there, is of course Peter van Petegem. There are a few Lotto Domo team riders there, so obviously he's not too far. Let's have another look at this. Oof.
That's when I thought Plankert had gone. His back wheel chipped the corner, and that's where the rider from Lampere went down. Still, here we are now, the peloton. We can't get to the back just now to find out what's happening to Bettini. Rest assured, he'll be trying to rejoin. Looks like the air balloons collapsed there. Not a good moment for that either, as we come on to the old Quaremont.
Well, Peter van Petegem was right in there. I got a quick sign of him in about 5th or 6th position in the middle. You can see now this is a bit of a problem. This is the problem that's going to be for Paolo Bettini. There he is on the right-hand side. He's just come back with a group of riders. Very unfortunate for him. He's in about 75th position right now, so he's going to have to pick his way round. Once the race starts to accelerate and there starts to appear the gaps in the main field, he's going to have to jump round groups of riders to get himself into this bike race. Plankart has done a very good job. Big risks, but it's going to pay off for him because he doesn't have to struggle at the back end of this group.
I think this is Wilfred Kretskins here on the front as well for Quick-Step, who is the workhorse at this stage of the race for them, as he's doing a very nice job of riding these cobblestones on what is the steepest section here as they come up to the barriers, which will bring them up into the town. And he's got nice tempo there, but imagine now if you were Paolo Bettini the problems you've got, because the riders behind won't be as smooth as this one. They'll be struggling, the road will be totally blocked, and his rhythm will be completely disrupted. There's a long chase in store now for Bettini if he's going to come back up to the leaders here as they come up through the square. Now this is what I'm talking about at the back of the race. That's Jord Ludwig, who is in trouble for Seiko just there, as they now continue at the front with good tempo riding, but it all looks too good at the front. It's at the back now where the race starts to get itself into deep water. I think this is Wilfred Kretskins then of Quick-Step, who's leading the tempo and keeping a very good tempo indeed on the climb. The cobbles don't desist till you get to the top here of the old Quaremont, and it's good, narrow, but fast roads will take us towards the Peterberg.
Well, this is a good move here by Quick-Step, and they will, I think, probably be just setting a false tempo right now because they will hope that their man Paolo Bettini will be able to pick his way round one or two of the weaker riders at this point. They're just going past the little cafe halfway up. Van Petegem, you can see in the dark glasses in the red and white jersey there, moving up into about 6th position. In front of him, there's a Telecom rider. I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't Stefan Weissermann. In fact, Weissermann a bit further back there in about 8th or 9th, looking very comfortable. He loves these kind of bike races. This race and next week the Paris-Roubaix, which is coming up, are the races where he really does shine. Eric Zabel also very close to the front. There is Cipollini in about 20th position. There is Danilo Hondo, the champion of Germany, also moving forward right now.
And there wasn't Paolo Bettini because we didn't stay long enough there. That was a shot from our helicopter, so when the picture sort of goes out of focus, it's actually the exhaust fumes of the helicopter itself doing that. And that's the best way to get the pictures right now on these narrow roads. Good fast riding being done at the front here. Lotto have got their man up there, Peter van Petegem. There's Eric Zabel. There's still some good guys here. In trouble at the back here now, because this is Kretskins here. And now I'm not so sure it was Kretskins at the front then. So Kretskins now in trouble and looking to give a teammate a wheel there.
Well, that would be one of the team leaders. I didn't catch it. It was so quick. It could have been Boonen who had gone down there with a problem. Let's just have a quick look and see exactly who it was. 53 is Kretskins. He seemed to be taking his wheel out to give to a teammate who was on the other side of the road.
Yeah, well, it is in fact David Bramati. Now, it's a strange swap that, because Bramati is a workhorse, not a leader.
Well, the order will have been given by the team at the early part of the day to look after certain riders, and maybe the fact is that Bramati is going very well right now.
Well, this can only be Luca Paolini now, setting the tempo on the front. because he's the only one left. We know Bettini's whereabouts. It's not Tom Boonen, and we know that it's not Servais Knaven or Frank van den Broek, or indeed Johan Museeuw yet.
Well, I saw Frank van den Broek riding in about 10th or 12th position, so he's actually made a very good start here to the Old Quaremont. This climb has actually been lengthened, unfortunately, Phil, since I was racing. They get towards the top and they turn off towards the right, and it's put an extra section of around about 300 or 400 metres of cobblestones. They're back onto the main road now, down towards Ronse, and all of these team helpers will look back as we go to the leading group of 4, and they're already on the Patersburg.
Yes, and they're all back together too, so once more they've rejoined just in time for a 4-star 1 in 5 ascent to the Paterberg. And this climb also only short, 350 metres, just a little stab on the legs, this one. But what a stab this is, because it is extremely steep, because it's so short. And this is now hurt Vincent van der Kooi. I think this time he might well be going off the back, but there's plenty of people to give him a pat on the back as he makes his way up. He's been in the lead now for a long time. You see, you don't have to be a star to attract the encouragement of the people of Flanders.
And it is so difficult to ride a climb like this at 20% on the cobblestones out of the saddle. You watch the big guys when they come a little bit later on, the Ludo Dirksens, the Johan Museeuws, they will ride this climb sitting down. Well, it's a pat on the back on the Paterberg here for van der Kooi, but he's going to have a hard time staying in contact with this group for very much longer.
Well, he's got the wily old Jackie Durand just ahead of him. Inside 5 minutes the gap now, and the climbs really have only just begun. Onto the little bit of concrete slabs, which is famous around Belgium. When you race here and you come off the cobblestones, though, they feel beautiful. Now, is this Celestino having a little dig at the front for Seiko? That's where he's made the move.
The reason is because Paolini's looking over his shoulder there to see, and in fact looking at the size of the group there, Phil, that is a very large group for the summit of the Olde Quaremont. They're off the main road right now, dropping down to their climb, the Paterberg. And it's so difficult right now over the next few kilometres, because they go from the Paterberg to the Koppenberg to the Steenberg Dries, the new climb that I was talking about just a little bit earlier. But a lot of riders, there are 3 new climbs in Tour of Flanders this year. A lot of riders very worried about this new climb, the climb of Forest. It's around about 1 kilometre in length, but it's very steep indeed. 75 kilometres to go right now, and it's a very large group, bearing in mind that we've already gone over the Old Quaremont.
A lot of tenacious bike riders today, because it was difficult to pin down a real hot favourite, exception being Museeuw, of course, at the start today. You ask anybody who was going to win, and we got a different set of names, apart from Johan. But Johan has either put the word out he's sick, or maybe he was sick all week. Nobody actually knows the truth. The riders themselves, one said to Paul Sherwin here, we don't read the press because I don't think they trust Johan Museeuw.
Well, a lot of people thinking that maybe the problems surrounding the Quick-Step team were not quite as bad as they were made out to be. But Johan Museeuw, Phil, as always at the start, did not give anything at all away. The Belgian commentator at the start line saying to him, well, Johan, are you going to try and get on the podium today? He says, I've been trying to get onto the podium for 16 years, and he's done it 8 times.
Absolutely right.
Great bike rider. He never gives anything away. He's a different character to the character of Mario Cipollini, who is flamboyant and extrovert. Museeuw does it all on the bike with his legs, and does it all in a magnificent style when he's on form.
Yes, a very shy character, but the crowd in Belgium love him. And it looks as though we've got a little regrouping a bit at the front there, as this is the head of the peloton, and this could be an interesting climb for them. It's only short, as we've seen, but they'll need a little bit more space for the bunch on that climb of the Paterberg. They've caught the Seiko rider, put him back in the peloton, but this peloton, I'd like to pull back and just see how many riders there are here. Cipollini is just on the tail of our picture. You can see him as we make the turn. He's still in a very strong position. Looking down though, Stuart O'Grady's made it also for Australia. Onto the 4-star climb now, and all action again, but I haven't seen Paolo Bettini, and I would think he's going to be committed to a chase for a while now.
I think he will have moved up on the main road there to Ronse, because he was on the back end of the main field, and that may well be why they haven't accelerated. Second position, you recognise that man there? That is Johan Museeuw.
All of a sudden, just from nowhere.
Just from nowhere. He knows this bike race. Van Petegem there in the pink jersey, Stefan Westerman. These guys know the right moment to come to the front end of the main peloton.
Well,
Fabio Baldato on the left hand too. Don't forget, he was second in the Tour of Flanders a few years ago. He's just got himself a win there in one of the stages of the 3 days of La Panna. He likes this bike race too. The big names are coming forward right now. You can see them all on the front end of the main peloton. Baldato here. In fact, he's opened up quite a nice little gap over the rest of the main field. Weserman moving up into 4th position. Johan Museo, the first time in this bike race we've seen him appearing with 74 kilometres to go. There is Michael Bogard moving forward as well. The big names are all here right now. The leader there of Lotto Domo. There you can see him on the far side. That was
the thing is that
Bettini was there.
Bettini's
just going
just gone around the corner. He's really
place.
scurried through the bunch.
This is the back.
Meanwhile, this is the peloton in trouble again. It looks like they're starting a points race on the track now, as they all hold on to the fence before the gun goes. Absolutely amazing, and it's the end of the race for these guys now. So Bettini was wise. He got through on the flatter roads, and now he's going to try and do something, because he's got back up towards the sharp end.
But you see these guys like Johan Museo, like Paolo Bettini, they knew how important it was to get to the front end of the main field. There was the leader of Team Cofidis, Peter Farazane. He's at the back end of the main field. Not great for him. But the big names were right in the first 10 positions when they came to the foot of this climb here, the Paterberg. Unbelievable.
As Garcia da Costa went through there, good rider when it's stage races and hills, but different story when the Spaniards come to race here. Never won this race, the Spaniards. Now this is the front of the main chase group at 3:46 now, so again the small climb of the Paterberg has really hurt the breakaway. Now as Bettini still making good progress here. There's a little bit of a group here trying to start a workmanlike fashion now. We're on course for the Koppenberg as the next climb. It'll be hill number 8, and that itself is only 550 metres, but it's another steep climb.
We're about 7 kilometres now away from the Koppenberg, so that gives the men who were in difficulty there on the Paterberg a chance to come up. But you see the danger of riding at the back end of the main field. About 18, 19 riders in that leading group here. This is the group who've just managed to scurry across, having left behind Noch 11. That means now 11 climbs to go. Still 11 climbs in this bike race, and I tell you what, 72 kilometres to go. This race is certainly far from over, but we are now in the most important part of the Tour of Flanders, the Mont, the region of the Mont. The climbs are small climbs that are so repetitive. There's hardly 10 kilometres of racing from now to the finish, Phil, without a cobbled climb in it.
Yes, not a good time to tell these riders at the back. But they're coming across again and hoping they can put themselves in a better position so they don't get dropped on the next climb, because that's the way they think. Those riders who were delayed on the climb now were stopped or walking. You can reckon they'll form a chase bunch, and if there is a little bit of respite, then they will get back on. Otherwise, they'll just ride into the finish, and there are shortcuts through to the finishing line. We often see from our commentator position riders coming in from the Tour a long time before the race arrives.
In fact, just as you speak, I saw a couple of guys going by there, and they obviously were on their way to an early bath.
3:26 at 71 kilometres to go. We've now done 50 kilometres here on air, and we've seen the gap come down from 11:24 to 3:25. We're into the town of Zulzeke. This again is still the man from Quick-Step here, Luca Paolini, on the front, working well.
4 kilometres now to the Koppenberg. Museo just sitting at the front, just keeping an eye on affairs, letting everyone else set the tempo. That group has swelled somewhat, but it's definitely not the same size as it was a few moments ago as we went over the Eau de Quaremont.
And just look at Museo here, watching everybody, assessing who is here, who's looking good. He's such a crafty rider. Michael Bogart, he's got right on his back wheel there. That, I think, is significant today. Bogart seems to have found some very good form in these last 10 days of the early part of the season. We've got an attack here. Is this Serpellini?
Well, in fact, it mustn't have been Serpellini who went down at the bottom of the Eau de Quaremont, because this is him right now out making a move at the front end of the main field. I would say, Phil, that group, the front end of the main peloton right now has swelled to around about 45 riders, and we're looking, I would say, to 3 kilometres to go before the Koppenberg.
Well, it's an interesting move by Serpellini to try and pedal away from the peloton here. because if he catches up with the 4 leaders, I'll have no strength left to help him, and he's set himself a 70-kilometre ride to the finish. But there is a reaction from the field.
I think the only reason he's doing this is to try and make sure he can get around the corner of the Koppenberg ahead of everybody else, so he doesn't have to battle at the front end of the main field to get up there in nice position. The Koppenberg basically rebuilt over the last couple of years. It's quite a magnificent climb nowadays. Not as difficult it was in the old days, but certainly, again, quite a strategic point in the Tour of Flanders, an area where you have to look at this. Bettini's moved across here. Crafty bike rider. He was in difficult a few moments ago, a flat tyre almost before the start of the Old Quaremont, and riding himself now into a counter-attack.
What terrific form he really has got. I've never seen him ride so well at this time of the year. He's a total workhorse, and there he is, second man in our picture, with Alessio just in front of him.
Dangerous move for Quick Step here, because they're going to put pressure on everybody else. Poor old Johan Museo must be thinking right now, oh, I've got my teammate Bettini off the front. I want to win this bike race, but I can't chase down. But he's such a calm bike rider when it comes to tactics, cold when it comes to making decisions out on the open road. Everybody knows he wants to win this bike race for a 4th time, but he will force everybody else now into a position of difficulty.
Looks like Fabio Baldato may have got himself up here as well. Standing there right on the back is a teammate of Giovanni Lombardi, the lead-out man for Cipollini.
Great bike rider Lombardi, not very often excelled in these Northern Classics at all. Getting on the back there, Roberto Petito is the man from Fassa Bortolo. This is a group mainly made up here of Italian riders. A good move just before they get to the early slopes here off the Koppenberg, because they don't have to battle to get round the corner in the first 4 or 5 places.
Fabio Sacchi's the Seiko man. Had a very, very good race in Australia in January. I think they were asking which way to go there.
They weren't sure, because in fact the reason there was a confusion there right now, because they were looking up the road and they saw a car turn to the right, and that was obviously the press car taking a shortcut, because the press cars are not allowed to go here on the climb of the Koppenberg. The 4 leaders getting themselves back together for the Koppenberg. Now their time gap inside of 3 minutes, 69 kilometers to go. And look at these statistics of the Koppenberg there. Unbelievable. Over 20% at its steepest part. Around about 22 in fact, even though it's only around about 550 meters in length. This is the main field, controlled there by Lotto Domo, and they're the team right now tactically missing out, because Quick Step have 2 men on the attack.
Heading up to the Koppenberg, here we are now, familiar scenes and memories here of the years gone by, but in fact this was out of the competition for 5 years, reintroduced last year with a new surface on it, and surely this time these boys are going to crack. Thomas Lisa on the left of our picture, Michael Rick, the 2 Germans who have proved the mountaineers over the last 3 mountains, and again they put now Jackie in trouble. Now, you know, a lot of riders won't get up this climb. This climb is so steep, we can expect to see riders in the main field obliged to walk because they won't get a run at the climb. Jackie Duron, number 3 of the 4 men, and hats off to Vincent van der Kooi, because he really has tried to stay with this breakaway.
It's just a horrendous climb, I have to say. I remember when we built up for the Tour of Flanders, when I was racing, it was just basic when the plastic soles were introduced and you couldn't actually get up here. We used to buy pieces of leather to stick underneath the shoes, so because we knew we were going to have to walk this climb, and it was serious preparation to make sure everything was right for the Koppenberg in the Tour of Flanders. These guys have got a great chance. They will have used very small gears, probably 39 on the inside and a 25 on the outside, and that's the only time probably in the whole day they will have used that gear. This looks like the counterattack, which is moving off the front. Paolo Bettini is in this group, and this is a group of 8 riders now starting to move off the front end of the main field. And tactically, I don't think it's a great situation for Lotto Domo, the team of Peter van Petegem, and I would say they're the team who are going to have to take up the pace-making on the front end of this main field, because 2 quick-step riders are in the group, and the man who leads the World Cup, Paolo Bettini, on the front. What a great bike rider.
And already on the Koppenberg, that's how hard it is now, that's how the gap has come down. Bettini on the right of our picture, other members of the breakaway, Paolini, Lombardi, Petito and Sacchi. There are 5 of the names we've worked out for you. And just look at the strength of Paolo Bettini, this magnificent rider. Just a couple of climbs ago was in the melee of the mass with a front wheel puncture. He's ridden right through the field. Tremendous ability to do that and then go straight off the front as soon as he made contact.
Well, that really was an excellent move there, and he knows the best way to ride this climb. He's on the right-hand side of the road right now, and he's out of the saddle, which is a very difficult thing to do on this climb. The best way to ride a cobble climb. There is the rest of the group on the front end of it. You can see Seiko in control. I'm absolutely certain not far away from the first 4 or 5 positions in that main field will be Johan Museo, but you can see the leader of the World Cup, Paolo Bettini, the winner of Milano-San Remo, sitting in the saddle, gritting his teeth to just keep that big gear ticking over. This is a serious move here by the Italians, putting a lot of pressure onto the field. Seppellini was the Lamprey rider. Let's have a look further down.
All Italians, Paul.
They're nearly all Italians in that group here. Museo is up there in second position. Baldato on the left-hand side. Such a powerful bike rider, Johan Museo. Michael Bogard is the Rabobank rider just on the right-hand side. Big names are theirs. Weissermann also to the front end of the main field.
There's huge efforts being done here now with 8 riders going clear. I hope we get some shots at the back to show you the sort of chaos that will be on this climb now as the crowd cheer up their individual heroes of the day. Just going across the gap too for US Postal is Vyacheslav Yekimov. He's just hanging on in a good position there right now. And on the left of our picture, the white colours there, the world champion, using the barriers and anything he can find right now, Mario Cipollini, but still, this strong man riding well. Stuart O'Grady with the bands of the Australian champion in the centre picture. And just behind there, 145, there's Nico Matan, another man for Flanders, also riding well. But all of these riders still in with a chance here. This is the steep climb, very often one of the decisive climbs here.
A lot of Team Telecom riders there. 161 is Ralph Aldag, a man who's been at the top of the sport for an awful long time, a very good worker. This is the chaos at the top of the climbs here right now, and you can see the huge crowd that have turned out, and they've certainly put in a very serious bit of advertising at the top end of the main field. I've not seen this before at the top of the Koppenberg, but certainly as we look down here, this race is starting to form now with the big names coming forward. That is the counter-attack right now. There are still 4 riders off the front end of the main field by not really very much more than a couple of minutes. But this is a great move by Paolo Bettini, the leader of the World Cup, to get himself into this breakaway move, which is almost completely full of Italians.
8 riders in the breakaway. We're still waiting to pick up 2 names for you at the moment. The man sat at the back, though, is Giovanni Lombardi, and I can't see him doing any work in this breakaway because he is in charge of leading out Mario Cipollini, showing a little bit of concern there. This is the leading 2 riders still on their own now, Michael Rick and Thomas Lisa, the 2 German riders, staying together here as they come off onto the smooth roads for a short respite before we head on to one of the new climbs, and I've never seen it, Steenbeck Dries. It's a climb of just 700 metres.
Oh, there's a motorbike gone down as well. This is
well, that's just what you need, blocking the road up now.
This is the reason why the Tour of Flanders have kept away from the Koppenberg for so many years, and it's not an easy job. That's one of the neutral vehicles, the neutral motorbikes.
Service. He blocked the whole race here now, and the rider complaining there is David Bramati, again with the wheel trouble. One or 2 riders explaining to each other. Looks like Robbie Hunter also in trouble. And one of the US Postal boys, is that Efimov? No,
I think it's Max van Heeswijk.
Max van Heeswijk, it looks like him.
And this is the problem here. Van Heeswijk is stuck at the side of the road. He can't get his foot out of the pedal, and it's so difficult. The Koppenberg, if you stop, it's almost impossible to get going again. You see, I don't know how he lost it there, but he's actually blocked the complete road, the motorbike there, and in fact he nearly took out David Bramati. Bramati, in fact, I think was almost taken out by the motorbike, and certainly doesn't look very happy, does he?
No, and the motorbike rider there is okay as well, thank heavens for that, as the 2 riders on the front now will know nothing about what's happening behind. They would anticipate it though, because those climbs are so narrow. This is Thomas Lisa, as they're just about getting things underway here. Bramati's got to be out of the hunt now, and so too I think it is Max van Heeswijk. So those 2 riders, I think, are not going to catch up now with the leaders, because remember the last time we saw them, we've got 2 and 2 up front, We've got 8. Listen to the crowd booing the motorcycles. Well, I'm not so sure it's exactly down to him. He didn't intentionally try to take out Bramati.
And this is one reason, again, Phil, why there is a deviation around the Koppenberg as well. None of the team cars actually go up here either. They turn right at the bottom of the Koppenberg and take a circuit around to rejoin the bike race a little bit later on, because of the fact this climb is so steep. If a car stops there, there is absolutely no way you can get it going again. You have to reverse down to the bottom and start again. This is the second group, the Achtervolkers, the chasing group. There are still the 2 leaders, followed by the 2 men who've been left behind from that leading group. And now this group of Italian counter-attackers, and we get a chance here just to see what their advantage is over the main field and who is actually chasing right now. And I think Johan Museo is starting to wonder if the advantage is going to go across to his teammate. That's a big group for the moment, Phil.
Knowing Johan, he won't be panicking yet. He certainly won't do anything to endanger Paolo Bettini, but he won't expect him to stay away, I don't think. Let's have a look here now at the breakaway. Well, not the breakaway, but the head of the field here, and the Team Coast rider there is Torsten Rund, taking them around the corner. Peloton regrouping a little bit here, and quite a nice size still, as we're heading out in search of hill number 9 for the day.
Mario Cipollini comfortably in with the main pack. A lot of his teammates there as well. You can see the zebra strip of Domino Vacanze. They'll be looking completely and utterly after one man today, who said he felt he was in with a big chance of winning Milan-San Remo this year, Tour of Flanders this year, Mario Cipollini. The line of Flanders flags waving, indicating the wind coming here from the left-hand side. 64 kilometers to go. That's around about 45 miles of racing right now. The whole of the main field trying to ascertain just how they need to respond right now as we rejoin the 2 leaders, the 2 German leaders, Lisa and Michael Rich. Michael Rich has been an absolutely superb time trialist in his amateur days, and turning out to be a pretty good attacker right now on the road. This is the new climb, the first of the 3 new climbs in this year's Tour of Flanders, 700 meters in length, climbs up 37 meters, 7%, the Steek-Bedendries.
Yes, it's not so far either. It's only given 2 stars, so it's not going to hurt them too much, this one. That is, if you haven't been in the lead, like these 2 have for quite a long way now. Lisa looking still very, very cool and collected here. Now, the 2 riders, I think, are not going to get back this time, because this hill has come just a little bit too quickly on from the Koppenberg, and because of that, I don't think they'll have a chance to regroup, and they'll be heading to their destiny behind, to the chasers. Seem to have lost our little time clock at the moment, so we don't quite know what the lead is, but we'll see for ourselves very shortly now, because after this we go to the Tyenberg and a new climb, La Duds. And I think by then we're going to see different riders coming to the fore.
Well, these 2 riders now, all they can do is just hope that they can keep on to their advantage as much as possible. I would say the next time we do get an official time check, Phil, it's going to be around about 1.5 minutes. There's the car going by. They're saying it's 1.5 minutes to the 2 chasers and 2.5 minutes to the peloton, but I think we'll find that time check by the time it goes up again will have changed quite dramatically. Because these guys, you could see the visible difference in the speed. On the front there, Bettini very excitedly setting up the pacemaking, and as you saw earlier, Giovanni Lombardi in exactly the same position, sitting on the back of the group. His team orders will be not to contribute to the success of any breakaway at all.
There's Petito, and this rider here is Luca Paolini, who really was one of the men in charge of spearheading this race, and that's one of the riders we hadn't seen before, but that's Enrico Cassani, Paul, who's got in there.
Well, in fact, a teammate last year of Bettini. He was a great bike rider for the Mapei Quick-Step team in their domination of Paris-Roubaix, and he switched across this year. He's a rider who's done very well in these classics, and in fact finished 7th in Paris-Roubaix last year. Great bike rider.
So he's read it well. Balducci is the other rider. I'm looking at him at the moment, Gabriele Balducci. Now, he's a rider who's currently on very good form. Well, it's absolutely amazing, Paul, but I can never recall an all-Italian breakaway like this, but everybody's Italian.
It's quite remarkable. This is Steek-Bedendries, 7% at the steepest part, but it is rather interesting that it is a completely Italian attack coming off the front end of the main field. In fact, I think a few moments ago I said that Cassani was 7th in Paris-Roubaix. He was 7th in Flanders last year, and then 10th in Paris-Roubaix. This is the front end of the main field. And it still looks like Benoit Joachim. He's doing a lot of work, obviously, to try and pull Yaroslav Ekimov back into the main race. 63 kilometers to go. That's for the leading group of riders on the road. Johan Museu not too far away.
This is Fabio Sacchi bringing through on the left now. And there's the gap, 1:52. And I think the second group is possibly going to be the split between the two front runners, and the next two are probably only just in front of this group right now, as it is Balducci setting the pace now. But all Italians: Bettini, Paolini, Lombardi, Petito, Sacchi, Serpellini, Castani and Balducci is the composition of these 8 riders. Well, at least they'll be able to hold a conversation.
Well, they'll be able to get themselves sorted out. They'll be heading out now towards another very difficult climb. The next climb that will be rearing up into their faces will be the Tyenberg. I think almost as steep as the Paterberg. This is the main field behind. That's Mark Wouters on the front trying to stir it up. Interestingly enough, I said a little bit earlier, I thought that Rabobank were doing too much work early on. There's a big counter-attack now of 8 riders going clear off the front, and they've completely missed out on it.
No Rabobanks yet. They've been ridden around and shown how to put in the real move, I think, and Paolo Bettini was one that spearheaded it despite just rejoining the front runners. 1:41 the gap. It's coming down all the time. Just about 39 miles still to run to the finish in Miebecker. Slight uphill finish, but on good road surface. While we've been commentating, we've been entertained to a junior race running round and round our commentary position, but that seems to have finished now, as the crowd are now watching like you on television.
That time gap coming down very quickly now, down to 1:39 with just outside of 60 kilometers to go. That's the main field, and you can see a lot of the service cars haven't yet got back into the bike race because there's a lot of riders getting left behind at the moment, and I'm surprised to see such a large peloton still together after about 120 kilometers of racing.
But still plenty of climbs to make a difference. Here are the 2 German riders now. Thomas Liese still stepping on the gas here, and it looks like he might have cracked his teammate for the day, Michael Rick, because it looks as though Liese on the Tyenberg is now hurting Rick. Well, this could go down as one of the best rides Liese has ever done as a top pro.
Well, the difficult thing here right now is these climbs are so steep. This one is 18% at its steepest part. There's no way you can actually keep a nice steady pace, a comfortable pace. You have to ride as hard as you can just to get your body and your bike up. There's a slight gap between these 2 riders, but I would think once we get over the summit they will join up together, because they need to keep together as close as possible. The time gaps we're getting right now, that 1:22 is to the counter-attack on the road, the group of the 8 Italians, and just 40-odd seconds behind them is the main field with all of the other leaders who for the moment have actually been surprised, I think, by that counter-attack of the Italians.
Well, surely they can't let an 8-man Italian attack go. They're going to have to work on it. Remember, the Italians have won this race for the past 2 years. No Belgians won it since, well, Andre Schmil, I suppose, in 2000, but he's a naturalised Belgian. Peter van Petegem might claim it in 1999.
In fact, I think you're right there, because this is a serious acceleration going off the front here, and we may well be seeing the end of Michael Riech there in second position. That was the second group of the first group of counter-attackers, because caught in the middle somewhere must still be Jackie Durand and Van Kooy. And Serpellini doing a serious job on the front end here. Only 500 meters in length, but these climbs, the repetitive nature of these climbs, make it so difficult to find a decent rhythm, and that's what really eats into the energy levels at the end of a day like this. This is the steepest part of the climb right now at 18%.
Just look at the tempo of Serpellini here, and the rest are matching it. And then when you think of the images there of Michael Rick a few moments ago, these boys are absolutely flying up here. This is Balducci again, who's continuing to tempo. He's had a good start to the season. He had a best position 9th in Het Volk, so he likes racing in Belgium. The Italians never used to, but they do now.
A couple of years ago, he got himself a nice place in Ghent-Wevelgem. He finished 10th there. Looks like Matin on the front here. It's difficult to see because there's so much vibration. The main field now. There's Vandenbroek on the right-hand side. He's trying to get himself to the front. Johan Museo on the left. They're allowing everybody else to do all the pacemaking right now. A lot of teams have been caught out, and I think once again, although the riders will not admit it, there is a certain rivalry between the Quick Step team and Lotto Domo, who are again one of the teams who've missed out.
Yes, and Matin rides the French Cofidis team, but very, very much a Belgian, and always wants to ride well in his home classic races, and does, as he now sets the tempo here. It's a little bit of a defensive move now, as Frank Vandenbroek was peering round there to see what was going on up front. These are the two riders who must be imminently about to be caught by the 8 Italians. Let's have a little look. Well, there we are. There's Balducci first across to them. So 2 of the 4 have been caught as they continue now. Jackie Duron takes a good look at him. Now, is he going to try and stay with these 8 for a little while longer? He's wondering where the rest of the race is, I think. There's the lineup for you coming up on the screen at the moment. Now, is Jackie going to try and get in there? I'm sure Van Kooi will try to survive just a little bit longer. It's unlikely, though, he'll finish the race, I think.
Well, this is a bit chaotic right now because just catching those 2 men has slowed down the impetus of this group. And if you look at the time gap between group number 2 and the peloton, it's actually come down a little bit. And I think if we get onto the longer, straighter sections, the main peloton will start to see. Look at Museo there. Second position in the blue and white jersey. He is so calm and collected. Come on, boys, I don't really care. He's playing a game right now. It's a tactical game, forcing everybody else to do the pacement. I don't care if my teammates win up the road. I'll just stay here. And that's what I think is his strength, the power of forcing the other riders into believing, as they have done all week, that he's got a bad knee. They have done all week, thought that he's got bronchitis, but this is the Tour of Flanders. He's not going to wait. He wants to win this bike race again.
Well, as a classic rider, I think he's number 1 in 2 departments. He's the best tactician, and he's the finest man over the cobblestones, because he can ride them better than anybody. And he's got this race under control just now. He knows that Bettini is out in front as well, which is not what the peloton thought. They expected Bettini to be the workhorse for Johan Museo. 1:17 the spread on the field now. Seiko at the front, but they have a man away, don't forget, so they're not going to react to this move.
Somebody's going to have to organise. That time gap between the 2 groups, the 2 main groups of the bike race, was down to just 30 seconds a few moments ago. Now, if somebody doesn't take responsibility, Phil, at the front end of the main field here, they're going to have a very hard time because the gap will start to increase. I think that's Michele Bartoli close to the front. He's obviously working for the team today because he's coming back from a very difficult start to the season where we saw him go down and have a very serious injury. This is the 8-man chase group, just 36 seconds behind the leading 2 Germans, and right now the fact that the main field is shut down and there's no organised chase, it's starting to stretch out again from the 8 to the peloton.
Markedal, and it was Bartoli on the front for the Fassa Bortolo. Changed the colours a little bit this year, as we now have won the few descents in this race. Most of the roads seem to be flat or uphill. 38 seconds to the second group. That's the group we're looking at here. Again, the motorbikes running a bit close there on the right-hand bend, causing the rider there to brake pretty sharply.
This is actually not looking very good for the main peloton. There's obviously a lot of tactical manoeuvring going on there in the main group behind, because these guys, the group of 8 we're looking at right now, are not riding full on, yet they are extending their advantage. And look at the gap now between group number 2 and the main peloton. It's almost a minute as we go over here, the Cassé and the cobblestones at Etikove.
Well, you know, at 58 kilometres to go, I will get concerned a little bit by this breakaway, especially when the World Cup holder and the winner of the first World Cup race of the season is in it. Bettini, Sterpolini looking very sharp. It was his fine tempo riding on the Koppenberg which has caused this to happen. Balducci is also riding extremely well, especially in this part of Europe right now. And they must be a little surprised they've got such a gap. You'd think we were commentating on a national race in Italy rather than the famed Tour de Flanders just at the moment. Jackie Duron still hanging on the back along with Vincent van der Kooi. That's his face for you. I'm not surprised it's hurting him right now, but at least they've got a free lift. They don't have to work anymore. Nobody will shout at them for sitting at the back. They've had a brilliant day so far. They are just closing in, but on these sort of roads, the two Germans are more or less holding their advantage at 25 seconds. So we'll wait for the next climb to start shutting it down.
Well, the next climb is again one of the new climbs in the Tour of Flanders, the first time ever. Loze, 13%, around about a kilometre in climbing, and it may well be goodbye to the two different nationalities in this group of 10 riders. Durand there in the white jersey for France and La Française des Jeux, and Van der Kooi there, number 227 for the Bank Lotteria, because I think this is quite a steep and nasty little climb, and by the summit I think this 8-man counter-attack will be the 8-man of leaders over the bike race here at the Tour of Flanders. There are the two leaders, just surviving for the moment. The two Germans have got back together, but as you can see, it's just basically now a question of survival, because their advantage is just 18 seconds.
And in fact, the peloton right now are closing in as well at 1:12, so this could all be together again by the time we get to the Boigneberg, which is climb number 12, and another new one. Although we have climbed it before in 1978, the only time in fact we've ever climbed the next climb, and I can't remember at all what it's like. But we're looking here now at riders just trying to split the field. This has been a very good race, but there's a lot of strong men around. Giovanni Lombardi still last man, collecting the tickets, waiting for the arrival of his world champion captain. He won't help this escape at all.
No, his job today really is to think about the chances of Mario Cipollini, and if there is a large group towards the end, then Cipollini would love to sprint up this finishing straight with the World Championships jersey. Van der Kooi has gone off the back pretty dramatically, and so has Jackie Durand. So we're now looking at the 8 Italians who are the counter-attack, but they're not very far, Phil, off the tail wheels of the two German riders who were part of the leading group of 4, which have dominated this race since the early part of this afternoon.
Yes, so at 60 kilometres to go, they picked up the two Frenchmen, or the Frenchman and the Dutchman, and now as they come up towards the top here of Loze, I think we're going to start finding out the other riders are right there. The peloton, not surprisingly, Lotto are starting to find out in the hope that they can get Peter van Petegem back into the action. So teams are realising now that Johan Museeuw has played a card. 2 of his teammates are up the road, 1st and 3rd in Milan-San Remo, and now they've got to take Museeuw to them, and that's good tactics.
Brilliant tactics. I have to think that Patrick Lefebvre, who is sitting in the team car, he doesn't like to get involved too much in bike races these days, because one year, a couple of years ago, after the Paris-Roubaix, he had a serious heart problem. He was put under so much stress waiting for Johan Museeuw to win the race once more that he decided he didn't want to be the overall team manager out on the road anymore. But he certainly was in the car this morning as they pulled away. The car piloted by Wilfred Peters, the former henchman of Johan Museeuw, who nice again there, Phil, sitting in 3rd position, just orchestrating affairs. It's all actually going very much to his advantage for the moment.
It's absolutely brilliant just now for them. As we continue our climb of Loze here, the banner indicating the top. Still no sign of the two Germans, but they're not very far in front here now. Oh, they're here. There is Michael Rick, where we didn't see the catch. We were looking at the peloton, but it looks like now we are 10 riders over the top of Loze, and the peloton chasing.
Mark Wouters chasing former champion of Belgium, former stage winner of the Tour de France, on his own turf as well, getting the victory up in Antwerpen. But you can see now the two teams, the big teams who have missed out on this breakaway. Lotto Domo coming to the front with Rabobank, but there are not as many of the white, red, white, orange and blue jerseys on the front for Rabobank. I can see Michael Bogard in about 10th position. Nico Martin is there as well, and you can see the crowds here. The crowds charge around Belgium to see this bike race, and there's sort of an unofficial attempt to see the bike race as many times as possible. And some people, believe it or not, believe that they can see this race on 12 separate occasions, so pretty dramatic.
Well, that was Cassani who started a move there. Or what's happened here now as the crowd changed position? Yes, they've seen the leaders, they're not worried about the peloton. It's all action for the cars and to get to next position. This is Michael Rick, once in the lead, now hanging on to the back. I haven't spotted Thomas Lisa yet, but we must presume that they were caught together. But maybe Lisa's gone clear on his own pole, and our cameras aren't with him yet because he was ahead of Rick at the time.
Yes, well, he did drop him on that last climb there. We're now on the Eichenbergstraat that these riders are cruising along, and they're making their way across to the next climb of the day, the Boineberg, which, as you said, they went over in 1978, and I certainly don't remember that climb at all. It's a long time. In fact, that was the first year that I turned professional. I think, Phil, they may well have picked up Lisa as well, but look at this, the acceleration here. The whole race is coming back together right now. 20 seconds between probably Lisa and the next group, and then just a further 14 seconds back to the front end of the main field, who have accelerated.
So Lisa's still hanging on. We'll pick him up shortly though at 20 seconds, and the peloton closing. The Boineberg is just 2 kilometers in front, and that will be climb number 12 of 19. There's an awful lot of opportunity yet to change the pattern of this Tour of Flanders, but the first tactical victory has already gone to the Quick Step team. The World Cup leader is in front, and Johan Museeuw is watching his strong rivals have to chase. Michael Rick sitting at the back now, still riding very, very well. This is Balducci of the Vina Calderola team, Sidemek, who's sitting at the back as well. And just alongside him there, Cassani.
And there's the main field with Johan Museeuw, Steven Weseman, all of the other men not very far behind. Good move by this man here though, 51. Paolo Bettini, winner of Milan-San Remo, leader of the World Cup, winner of the World Cup as well. He certainly put a lot of pressure. I would think men like Peter van Petegem would have been very worried about the fact that Paolo Bettini there had got himself into a counter-attack surrounded by Italians.
Everybody having to come through on those motorbikes because the peloton is now closing very, very quickly indeed.
In fact, I think it's closed.
It's over. And just look at them. It's a very long peloton who's hooked up with those 9 leaders. We still think that Thomas Lisa is just in front. That's 19 seconds for advantage for him. And we'll probably pick him up again now that we've shut down the peloton to one big chasing group. And it still is a big group as we now are in search of Forest, which is a climb we haven't seen, but it was filling up all the pages of the newspaper. In fact, the Boineberg, I beg your pardon, the Boineberg is next, and then we've got the climb of the Forest, which has been filling up all of the newspapers this week in Belgium, and the riders have wisely been out and checked it out. 15 seconds, here he is, Thomas Lisa, doing one of the rides of his life today in the Tour of Flanders, but I'm afraid it won't be a winning one. At 14 seconds, he might be quite surprised when he finds just how many riders come around him.
I think he will have expected there's a problem here. This is Cipollini. Now, that car right in front there is the race director's car. There is the rest of the group riding away. I can't see any problem with Mario Cipollini here right now. And if there was a problem with his machine, there would be a whole host of Domino Vacanze riders around him. He's cruising along right now, looking over his shoulder, and I wonder what this is all about.
No, I can't help you there, Paul. I wasn't so sure he wasn't going to stop. He might have been lining up for the corner. What we'll tell you if we find out. This is now Thomas Lisa making his attempt at the Boineberg. Don't look over your shoulder though, Thomas, because you're going to see the men who are chasing. 6% at the steepest point, an average of 5%, and the race referees now getting twitchy. They want everybody round Thomas Lisa. Here come the cavalry again now, as they're waiting for somebody to make a move. Bettini still on the front, still riding strongly, but we don't know now what has happened to Mario Cipollini. He was just off the tail of this group, and our camera's not going to go and show us, so we'll have to just sweat on that one for a moment. Here's Thomas Lisa as he continues his ascent of the Boineberg. It's a climb of 1 kilometre, and that could be a kilometre too far.
It certainly could be. You see the race referees in Belgium, they have a lot of referees on the motorbike. That man standing up here right now is one of the race referees, looking back to see what the time gap is, and he will then, if he feels that they're starting to come up too quickly, move anybody out of that gap to try and make sure that there is no falsification of the race. Peter van Petegem, you just see peeping through on the right-hand side there. He too has been very attentive over these last few kilometres. Still Paolini close to the front. This is Mark Wouters, the Rabobank rider, on the right-hand side. Benoit Joachim doing good there. You see Johan Museeuw moving forward in the yellow crash helmet with the lion on the front.
Benoit Joachim going to have a little dig here. Quickly marshalled by Johan Museeuw. Now that should cause a flurry of activity. Balducci picks it up pretty quickly too. You see Museo just watching but not interested to go, and now a counter-attack. Is this Wouters again? Now if this is a nice split, I think Johan won't ignore that one. He knows the possibilities from Mark Wouters, who took the yellow jersey a couple of years ago in the Tour de France when it arrived in Antwerp, and all of a sudden 5 men have a lead, 3 coming across.
Well, that was a strange acceleration there by Wouters, I have to say, because he'd done an awful lot of work on the front end of the main field. He just saw the opportunity and thought, well, let's have a go and see what happens. But Museo was on it immediately. Oh, that was very close.
So a touch of wheels, and Balducci giving a mouthful there to Cassani, but Cassani said, I didn't do anything, it hit my back wheel. Let's have another look at that. There he goes, and he's come across. In fact, he was looking the wrong way. It's a classic error.
A lot of
it's
bike
not
riders.
Really the fault of Cassani. It was just one of those things.
A lot of bike riders do that. I remember one man who used to do it a lot was Phil Anderson. I always wondered if he was going to fall off, and he fell off a number of times doing just that. Johan Museo, Phil, see how attentive he is right now. I can't quite figure out what the move is coming from Mark Wouters. He's done a lot of work right now. Looking down the line there, I actually can't see his teammate Michael Bogert. He may well have disappeared. They're over the top now of the Bonjeberg.
Here comes the counter-attacks now, though, and it looks as though people are getting a little bit excited here.
This is Frédéric Guédon, a big surprise winner a couple of years ago of Paris-Roubaix. He's been looking for the move. They're going through the town of Mater just now, and in a few moments' time they'll have a nasty section of cobblestones to go over. 51 kilometres to go, but everybody now must start to be just that little bit more attentive. A good move here by the Vinny Candelero team, putting one of their men across here. And,
again.
He's been very attentive as well, Phil, looking for the moves here right now. He's in the 8-man group that counter-attacked just a little bit earlier on. The man in second position in the white jersey there is Guédon. He's looked around ever since he was the surprise winner of Paris-Roubaix to try and confirm that win, but never really managed to come up with the goods.
No, on the left the leader, on the right the chasers, and still a big group here, and they're not far from the catch now. It's almost over at 50 kilometres from the finish here. Mark Wouters drives on, trying to catch on the back wheel there of Frédéric Guédon, who is seemingly riding like a man inspired here, as is the team Française des Jeux, who wants a little bit more action from the rest.
Museo, I think, just happy to stay at the front end of the main field. His favourite climbs are the Berendries and Ten Bosch. That's where I would think he will try and wait to think about some kind of move. And a move coming off the front here from Psycho. And this is always dangerous when you've had a scurry of attacks and then all of a sudden people sit up.
Well, this is Dario Pieri now. There's a man who could be seen as a likely winner of this race. He was on quite a few people's lips this morning at the start as a possible winner of the race. He's got good form after his first World Cup race in Milan-San Remo, finished 5th in that. So he's got the confidence to go the distance. And let's not forget either, Paul, that 3 years ago I think he was second in this race.
He certainly was. He's a man who many people thought would be a dark horse as an outsider, but to let him go away at 50 kilometres to go is rather a strange move, and on your own like that is a very difficult thing to do in a race here like the Tour of Flanders. Johan Museo went away for a very long attack a couple of years ago, but look at the climbs left to go. Forest, Steenberg, Leiberg, Berendries, Ten Bosch, the Mur de Grammont, of course, and the final climb, the one that strikes fear in everybody's heart, is the Bosberg. And there's Andrea Taffy, the first time we've seen him today.
Oh, the defending champion is still very much in the fray. He caught up then after his bad start this morning. A bike change, he had problems with his cleats. He changed his bike way back from the start line, and somebody told him the race had gone. He says, it's a long way, we'll have a chance yet. And he went back into the race at the end of the neutralised section. He caught up.
This is St. Maria Horbeck, just 49 kilometres to go. And they're in between the two climbs now of Bonjeberg and Forest, and all of these riders, I think, waiting just to see exactly how difficult this climb is going to be, because it's fine going out and looking at it. It's okay to go and ride it in training, but actually to attack it under race conditions is completely and utterly different. And I tell you what, Phil, this guy is doing a great job. I really don't know how he survived. There is the main field. He's not had very much more than 15 or 20 seconds, but looking back there at Dario Pieri, you can see him coming across the gap, but he hasn't really opened up much of an advantage over the main field. So a bit of a waste of energy, that move right now.
Well, Thomas is a very good track rider. He's a good time trialist. He was going to attack the world hour record, which he never did with success, but he is a rider who has a lot of speed in those legs, even if he has had the majority of the day out front. Help is at hand. Dario Pieri is going to be the first to reach him at 48 kilometres to ride, exactly 30 miles to go. Lisa now joined by Pieri.
This is a great move. He's a good bike rider. In fact, he's no stranger to success in Belgium, because last year he won the Grand Prix E3 as well. He's a good team man for Team Saeco. He did a lot of work a couple of years ago looking after Mario Cipollini, but I think his biggest performance was when he did finish second in that Tour of Flanders. Now this is indicating a two-man lead group, but I think for Thomas Lisa it'll be just a question of trying to hang on to the coattails of Dario Pieri for as long as possible, and I think he will have probably, Phil, a very difficult time when they come up to the climb of Forest. But look at this speed as they drop off one of the small climbs here, 67 kilometers an hour, and they're setting themselves up now for Forest. And I think we will see a serious acceleration at the front end of the main field to try and reduce the numbers from what is still a 45-50 man group down to a much more manageable size of around about 20.
Well, Museo won't attack till he gets to one of the small climbs, and he'll leave it as late as possible. The perfect one, of course, would be the Muir, his favourite point, his favourite springboard. Hill number 18 of 19. Until then, he'll try to control the head of the peloton. Just 1.5 kilometres, just over a mile now to the climb of the Forest, the unknown climb, which is 950 metres long, has an average gradient of 1 in 10 or 10%. It's going to be a toughie.
Scoris is the town they're going through just now. And interestingly enough, Thomas Lisa giving a few turns at the front end here for Dario Pieri. Pieri is a big, strong bike rider right now, but you can see this. You can see Rabobank not very happy with the fact that they've been caught out by that counter-attack. A big favourite has gone off the front. That was Mark Wouter stirring it up. A long line of the main field as they try and set it up. That time gap, 13 seconds to the main field. And I think that will get reduced somewhat dramatically on this very difficult climb of Forest, and then followed almost immediately by the climb of Steenberg, just about 3 kilometers further up the road. There's a big concentration of climbs coming up right now, and again, look at that, Benoit Joachim on the front there. He's having a great ride. I think he is sacrificing himself for Yaroslav Ekimov, who I think is still comfortably in the main field.
Well, he's having a wonderful ride. I'm looking down there, Paul. I couldn't see the rainbow jersey of Cipollini, so maybe he was drifting off the back to retire. But we'll wait and see on that one as we now head up towards this climb of Forest.
Difficult approach as well, tricky corners here, and Lisa not managing to stay in the slipstream of Dario Pieri around these corners. In a few moments time they will swing around to the left and kick up the main field. You can see accelerating. It's almost a bunch sprint to the bottom of these climbs all the time. Still a very big group here in contention at the Tour of Flanders, but I think Thomas Lisa's decided, Phil, to call it a day right now.
He's going to have to just hang on here. There's nothing else he can do. Those legs aren't going to take much more. A wry smile, I think, from Thomas. Speaks very good English, by the way. At 46 kilometres to go, it's been a long way out front for him. Dario Pieri, 1 second in the Tour of Flanders, now trying to go it alone for the win. And this again is Yaroslav Ekimov this time, is it? No, it's still, he looks very like him in that position, doesn't he? But this is still Joachim, who's now been given a little bit of a head here, which is possibly a good move by the peloton, because he's hit them enough times to get away, and now he's just trying. Now what's happening here at the back of the race? A problem on the right. He just about stayed on his bike there.
That was Douala just going off the road there.
Fabien Douala.
I think the way he went into that corner, I think he probably had a flat tyre at the back end. This is the chaser here. It's a surprising move. He's been given his freedom to try and get across here to Dario Pieri. Benoit Joachim, the former champion of Luxembourg. There is the main field, but they don't yet, Phil, seem to me to be in anger and in earnest in their attacks, and they're quite happy to let Pieri get off the front, and as long as he doesn't build himself up something like a 1 minute advantage, they don't have to worry too much for the moment, because he's using up an awful lot of energy in this lone attack.
They won't be concerned yet, not even if Benoit Joachim does catch up with Dario Pieri. But it's a move that Joachim would not have been allowed to have made. If George Hincapie had been riding today, he would have had a different job in the race. But as I say, without an obvious leader, especially with Max van Heeswijk now behind the race, there's a chance here to go out and do what domestics sometimes get the chance to do, and that is go out and make your own name.
Well, this is a bit strange right now because 1s and 2s are starting to ride across from there. Benoit Joachim has actually been caught, and 1 or 2 riders trying to force themselves off the front end of the main field. Now, this is rather strange here to see this kind of action happening. Here is Thomas Liese about to get caught. We're on this very difficult climb now of Verreest. It looks as if Quick-Step have got a man up there as well for the moment.
This is, I think...
Looks like Rolf Aldag.
Like Rolf Aldag, but
yeah.
he must have grown a little beard, but he's certainly got his riding style.
It is Aldag.
And when he looks over his shoulder, that's him. And he's gone straight by on the climb of Forest.
Kop van der Wegstrijd on the left-hand side is Dario Pieri, and the Achtervolger is the chaser, and it's strangely enough coming from Rolf Aldag. It's a very strange situation developing in the front end of the main field right now as they go over the summit there of Forest. Aldag second on the road, just over 26 miles to go to the finish. There's Loze, who led the bike race for an awful long time. There's a move coming off the front here now from the La Française des Jeux. And Benoit Joachim, Phil, there has managed to stay in contact with the counter-attack, but let's see where the main field are at the moment. Obviously not too worried about that climb. Museo riding up at the front end. What an unbelievable bike ride. He's been riding second or third wheel for an awful long time here right now.
Driving on still, Roberto Petito. Done very, very well in this breakaway.
Peter van Petegem in the red and white jersey of Domo Lotto. He's, I would think, scanning the lists of all of the pre-race favourites. Men like Eddie Merckx and all the other team managers feel that Peter van Petegem is the #1 favourite. The big question mark and the big headline in all the Flemish-speaking newspapers yesterday was, how strong is Johan Museo? And nobody really knows, and that's the big question mark when we come into the last 20 kilometres or so. Tricky descent off this climb of Forest, Phil.
And this might be what the worry was. At least it's not raining here because of the twist coming down, being chased by Rolf Aldag. Aldag, a big cyclist, finding it a little bit more difficult perhaps to get round the corner. But he would be a very useful ally for the moment, at least, if he could catch up with Pieri, because Aldag is a very strong workhorse, and he's seen his chance today and take a little bit of pressure off Stefan Westerman. I think Zabel is also still back in that big peloton.
Well, Aldag turned pro a very long time ago. Turned professional back in 1991 when he rode for the Helvetia team at the time. I think first time we saw him was at the Tour du Pont in America. Got himself a couple of stage wins over the years at that event.
There's 4 riders, so Joachim here has got himself into a nice little working group here. Looks like De Paula has also got into it. Lisa hanging on the back.
That was Christophe Mongin of La Française des Jeux as well.
Making the 4, yeah.
There's Museo sitting in second place. Van Petegem. Michael Bogard, the second orange jersey there of Rabobank, still very much in attention. A dangerous rider, I would say, towards the end, because if you remember last year, the big rivalry developed between Peter van Petegem and Johan Museo. They would not work together to chase down Andrea Taffy when he was on the attack.
Well, you can tell now by the face of these riders, every time they go over the hill, they'll unship a few boys at the back. But there is still a very tenacious bunch in this race. Dario Pieri has gone away from the head of that race when it was flat out, as we now come on to the next climb, the Steenberg, with its steepest part at 17%. This is a real steep climb, this one. Again, because it's short, it's steep, 825 metres. Climb number 14, 5 more still to go after this.
It's interesting the way they've changed the route of the Tour of Flanders a little bit over the last couple of years, because in fact this climb has not been used since 1997. It's the first time it's been brought back in. It is a very difficult climb, but at least it is a climb that is on a very smooth surface. So he's got an advantage of around about 15-20 seconds. You see, they realise the danger of this man. Look how well he's built. He's a very strong bike rider. Typical build for a race of this nature. And right now, I don't think they want to let him get too much of an advantage. This is the chasing group now of 4 riders. And there you can see that's Mongin in second place. He's got the red and white bands there on his shoulders, indicating he's a former champion of France, but that was in the cyclocross discipline. Benoit Joachim has got himself in there as well. And whoever else was in that group, Phil, has actually just been left behind. Paolini has got in there for Quick-Step. He's obviously been the man dedicated to go out and look for the counter-attacks right now.
That's Lisa who's been unhooked, I think. He was the 4th man, but he hasn't been able to hang on the steep part of this climb. He's done most of them on his own today, but hill number 14 has proved just a little bit too much for him.
That's Dario Pieri just at the front there, so he hasn't got much advantage over this group of counter-attackers. And in fact, that's Aldag. I'd forgotten all about him. He was caught in no man's land. So Dario Pieri is still off the front, chased in second position on the road by Rolf Aldag. Then this group of 3 chasers here moving forward right now.
Well, Aldag may as well just ease up, let these 3 come across, and then set about bringing back Pieri as a foursome. So we've got Pieri, Aldag, followed by Mangin, Luco Paolini and Benoit Joachim. That's the situation, but if they look over the shoulder, there's an awful lot of players still want a part of this act. It looks like Joachim here having a little trouble to follow the pace now as Mangin's gone clear. These 2 have got together over the top with 41 kilometres to go, and there'll be 3 more to give them a hand in a minute.
Well, this race is actually forming in front of our very eyes here right now. That's a great ride here by Rolf Aldag, who's been a professional for a long time, turned pro back in 1991. And I think Dario Pieri would be somewhat surprised to find himself getting some help. But the man in the pink jersey there for Deutsche Telekom, I have to say he's a very tough bike rider. This is the second group on the road, and they're trying urgently to pull themselves up. And in the main field, they too now are realizing that the race is starting to scurry away from them.
Up here for a bend, and it looks as though the pressure's gone off at the moment. Now the shadow boxing is beginning. 5 men shortly to come together, and none except Pieri, I think, will be considered a big favourite. Attacked by Serpellini. Is he going again? It's caused a reaction.
I think that's Max Scianri, because if you just look, there's a small bandage on the inside of his left leg there, and Scianri admitted yesterday he'd been suffering from a problem he had 4 or 5 years ago, a small muscle which aggravates the tendon just behind the knee. So I think we might find that's Max just getting away off the front end of the main field. St. Maria Horbeck, I think that is Scianri, and followed again by who? The Lion of Flanders. Lion of Flanders himself.
Oh, that Museo jumped on.
Yeah, amazing. Johan Museo is riding 3rd, 4th wheel all the time, looking for the little moves. He's actually looking for a counter-attack right now. He wants to get into a breakaway, but he doesn't want to use his own power to get off the front end of the main field, because if he has to attack, I think he would like to do it on the Berendries or Ten Bosch. Those are his favourite climbs. Get a small advantage, ride down to the Muur, and then hopefully consolidate on the ride down towards the Bosberg.
Well, again, you see, he's chasing down the moves, but he wants a free trip up to his teammate Paolini in that chasing group of 3. Doesn't want to endanger him. It's a typical tactic, this. We've seen it over the years, time and time again, by Johan Museu. And now he's waiting for others to come to the front, and he still has his cards to play, because up front Paolini could win this race for sure.
Well, in 5th, 6th position there was the first time I've seen him. I was fairly certain he was in the group, but Yaroslav Ekimov riding to the front right now. This is a very big group here, still in with a chance at the Tour of Flanders. Museo there, 3rd position. A little bit further back, you can see that was Ekimov just swinging out there in the dark blue jersey of US Postal Service. He too is in a pretty good tactical position, because he's got his man Benoit Joachim in the front. Now let's have a look at the race situation. There are the 2 leaders. Pulling back, we should be able to see the 3 chasers, and they are round about 20 seconds in arrears. There they are right now, Joachim, Mangin, Paolini. If they get together, this is going to change the front end of the main field quite dramatically, and make it very tactically difficult for teams like Lotto Domo, who have to seriously organise their chase on the front of the main field.
25 miles to go, 40 kilometres to go. Still absolutely no pointers to who's going to win this year's 87th Tour de Flanders. There's a lot of favourites still watching Johan Museo. He has a card to play because he's got a man up front who can handle them. Let's not forget either that Bartoli is in this group, a man who always surprises and loves racing in this part of the world, coming back, yes, from injury. I think this again is Petito on the front setting the pace for Bartoli's team. Cassani in 2nd place, Museo hovering menacingly in 3rd slot. Just behind him, he's gone off my sight now, so I can't see who it is.
It's Thomas Lees.
There's
just
Thomas Lees on far left, yes, he's just been picked up.
Survived a pretty long time, considering he was just dropped from that group. Brilliant ride by him. Museo happy there in 3rd. Move out of the way, please. Mr. Museo is orchestrating the front end and directing television cameras right now. Matin is the Cofidis rider in 4th position. Ekimov over on the right-hand side with Michael Bogert as well moving forward as we rejoin the 2 leaders. Aldag very comfortably around that corner. Again, another nice little section of cobblestones, Phil. This is really, I think, one of the most difficult bike races. It's a 2-kilometre section of cobblestones here that these riders face, and you can be sure that in the main field behind, they will accelerate once they get to this point.
Well, Johan will certainly ride them better than most if he gets half a chance at it. But as we continue now at 39 kilometres to go, this is quite a long stretch of cobblestones here at Brackle. And these are the 3 chasers, and just up the road are the 2 leaders. But they're having a real trouble fight here to get on terms with those 2 up front. Hardly waiting for them when 5 might go clear better than 2 rather. Here's the drive at the back, still being done by Fassa Bortolo, and I think it's probably because Michele Bartoli has insisted that he has a chance now at the front of this group.
Well, these guys now, as they hit this section of cobblestones, have got a 2-kilometre section of cobblestones. 3 kilometres after that, they will hit the Leyberg. Moving around the outside, look at that, Cassani. Dario Pieri accelerating. He's looking for the smoothest part of the road here, going across. It's a very... Look at the power of this man. Daldag is trying to find something somewhere to stay in his slipstream, but in fact he's slipping off the tail there of Pieri. And look at the gaps, 22 seconds to the chasing group of 3, but it's a lot less than that, because there is the main field making the junction to the chasers.
Well, they're picking some of them up. They're picking all of them up there. But
look at
Pieri
Cassani.
has gone again. Now Museo once again is free to fly because he's got no teammates out in front, but he'll look for others to make the move. It is the Muir, I think, where he'll choose to make the move if they come to it together.
Enrico Cassani on the front, setting the pacemaking. Last year he was a teammate of Johan Museo. I think that was Guédon just peeping round there for the Française de Jeu. May well have been Mongin, who's just been picked up from that counter-attack of 3 riders. Nico Matin looking good. Look at this, Museo digging deep now. Let's catch these guys by surprise if you can.
Well, this is a cheeky move now, but there's caused a consternation behind now. Put him on the cobblestones. Few can ride with him. Johan Museo tapping out the rhythm. Not going bad for a man that's had a problem with his respiratory, with breathing this year. He looks as though he's not so bad after all.
Well, you know, he's a sly old devil, Johan Museo, but I have to say, the best man in the world over the cobblestones. Look at this acceleration. Matin riding very comfortably on his wheel. That is Guédon, who's actually replaced the Française de Jeu rider, and they're opening up a pretty serious gap right now. There is the main field. The Lion of Flanders is roaring right now, and they're not too far away, Phil, from starting the Leyberg. Climb number 15 of the day, and that will be just 5 climbs left to go to the finish.
Well, that turn of speed on his favourite cobblestones has torn the peloton to shreds, and Johan Museo has done it again, waiting for his teammates to weaken them and then put in an attack. He wants help now. He's made the big effort to cause the split. Now he wants people to come and work with him. It's Nico Matin, I think it is going with him there.
Well, Nico Matin accelerating. Look a little bit further up the road there. I would think that is Rolf Aldag, who's been dropped there by Dario Pieri, but that was an absolutely unbelievable acceleration by Johan Museo. He's got the power in those legs, which are absolutely remarkable. Here in the middle there, as we start the climb of the Leyberg, is the man from Team Telecom. Nico Matin is quite happy to come forward. He can see this as being a very good move here right now. Guédon having the race of his life since winning Paris-Roubaix a couple of years ago, and Van Petegem has made it as well. Peter Van Petegem, we are now looking at the same protagonists who were on the acceleration last year. Peter Van Petegem doesn't live too very far away from here, and this is the first time we've seen him putting his nose to the front end. The big names are coming out to play, Phil.
Well, they certainly are now. Van Petegem knows that this is the move that Museo is making. He could not wait in the peloton. He had to go with it, because once you let Museo go, you never see him till the finish. He's not afraid to ride 40, 45 kilometres on his own in a classic. He's shown us doing that many times. And so you've got to go with the move now. And this is a big one that's coming up now. And this is Museo looking over and saying, well, come on, somebody else have a go.
Saying, I've started the move, come on, everybody has to work, and he's not too happy there about the presence of Peter Van Petegem. I think he was hoping to surprise him. Let's not forget, Van Petegem, a winner of the Tour of Flanders, the younger rider, and if it comes down to the sprint, I would expect Van Petegem to be much faster than Johan Museo, although Museo got himself across the line in front of Van Petegem last year.
Yes, but I don't know if he can do it this year, and it might be the cause of a little regrouping here to try again. There's the lineup for you. They've picked up Pieri. 36 kilometres from the finish. Matin's gone off to the left of our camera. We'll pick him up now because he's going to take benefit of the infighting between Museo and Van Petegem. Aldag closing the gap, and Museo chases it. There's Pieri, and finally Van Petegem sitting at the back. It's not over yet by any means. The peloton are holding this breakaway. Some 6 riders carefully in their sights, and it's Bartoli's team who's having to do the chase here now. 3 kilometres to the Berendries, which is a climb of 900 metres and has a maximum percentage of 14. As an attack comes now from the peloton, this is the move.
This is Bartoli. This is unbelievable, because this man, I wasn't even sure that he was going to be racing at this time of the season right now. A good move by him. He hasn't got much of an advantage over the main field. There you can see noch, meaning more. 4 more climbs to go. Berendries, Ten Bosch, the Muur de Grammont and the Bosberg.
Well, Bartoli knows now if he wants to play, he's got to join this leading group. Pieri, Museo, Van Petegem, all seen as favourites, and I think we could include Nico Matan too, because he's a rider who always rises to these spring classic races, and Cofidis, that's why they come here. Now we've got the group here. Now Museo will not overdo things. He's allowing a regrouping here because I don't think he wants to go anywhere with Van Petegem. And there comes the rest of them now, scrabbling across the gap. That breakaway has already got a little bit bigger, so I think Bartoli might have lodged on already. But it's going to come back.
It's going to come all back together. They're going through the town now of Elster. That's 3 kilometres to go to Berendries. And the thing about Museo, it's almost impossible to dictate the tactics he's going to adopt. He's won this race from close by the finish. He's won it from a long way out. He will wait, I think, to see just how the race develops. He's a master tactician when it comes down to this bike race. With 35 kilometres to go, 4 climbs still left to go, and I think we may well see him have a little tickle when it comes to Berendries, just to see if there's going to be any reaction. But one man who will follow him absolutely everywhere right now is going to be Peter Van Petegem, who looks in good form right now, and I have to say, for many of the Flemish experts, the big favourite to win this bike race.
Well, there's about 20 in this chase group. There are 9 in the leading group, and that's, I think, just about all now. This Max Chiandri again, and surprising us both here, but riding extremely well on the front of that peloton.
Yep, Chiandri admitting this might be his last ever Tour of Flanders, his last ever season, and it may well be that he'll come up with a great performance. Turned professional, Phil, back in 1989, and in these days of high-performance professional cycling, not many bike riders have a career that long.
No, and he was 7th in the Tour in this race 2 years ago, and very disappointed he was too, because he felt his teammate Dierksen had messed it up for him. But there we are, that's life. As we now look at the breakaway, and the whole of the heart is not yet into this.
Michael Bogard is one of the riders that's made the gap across there. It's a very strange tactical situation unfolding right now as we get closer to Berendries. We can't be very much more than 1.5 kilometres away. And certain teams now starting to get themselves organised. Looks as if that might be either Cassani, I think that's Cassani in 3rd position moving forward. Fabio Baldato is in this group as well. But nobody in that front group there really decided to get the organisation going. I think they're not too happy with the presence of 1 or 2 riders like Peter Van Petegem, who has got a very good sprint, but 2 guys have decided to pop off the front.
But I don't think it'll be the favourites here, because they're now marking each other out of it. But the arrival of Bogart in this breakaway is also going to disturb their rhythm, because Bogart is a strong man from a small group. He could ride off on his own. His big race, of course, the Amstel Gold Race, coming his way soon. And he's bound to meet one Lance Armstrong in that. Nico Matan and Monjean are the 2 riders that have gone away, is it?
It's Guédon, actually.
Oh, sorry, Guédon, yes, beg your pardon, Ferry Guédon. Had a little bit of a change a few kilometres ago. And this man, when he was a big surprise when he won Paris-Roubaix, but now he's developed into a very good, solid rider. And this looks like one of the best performances we've seen from him for quite some time. But he's looking for the moves, and he's taken it. He won Paris-Roubaix back in 1997. And he also, by the way, before he turned pro, he was 2nd in the amateur Paris-Roubaix. That was a few years back.
He won himself a stage last year in the Dauphiné Libéré. This is Berendries now. This is a climb where I would think we'd get some acceleration. Look at Vandenbroek on the right-hand side. He too is looking very comfortable. Here's Comesso as well.
I can't believe Comesso is still here, but here he is. He doesn't win many races, but he chooses them well, like a stage of the Tour de France or a couple of times champion of his country. And look at this, he's been riding near the front all day long without actually coming to the front. He's changing that right now on Berendries. Balducci is the rider in yellow, nailed on the front of the chase group there. These are the 2 riders trying to go clear.
Well, Frédéric Guédon, he's in second position here for the Française du Jeu. It's a great move here by Nico Martin on the front, and in fact Nico Martin doesn't have such a great relationship with the Tour of Flanders, because in fact a couple of years ago he crashed and fractured his hip, and that was after making a comeback, having stopped the sport, being told he wasn't able to race anymore because of a serious heart problem. Comesso showing the power that he's got on this very short steep climb here. Huge crowds again, Phil, and as you can see, despite the early morning misty rain, it has turned out to be a very nice spring day, although somewhat cold here in Flanders.
It's about 12 degrees, about 57, 58 degrees maximum Fahrenheit today. But these two riders are clear. You've got some idea with that shot of Comesso how high and how quickly they get up to the heights here, because this is over 100 meters above sea level, and they climb virtually the 100 meters in just the short distance of the climb of 900 meters. And this is Marlux on the attack here. I think it's Milosevic who's having a little go.
And moving into second position there, there's a white jersey, and I don't believe it could be Danilo Hondo. Trying to get a look round there to see whether it is the Paolo Bettini who's come forward once again, but we didn't manage to just get round the side there. There is a...
I think actually it's the new colours of Fassa Bortolo.
Yeah.
It is, and it might well be. I can't see his face either.
It's
now.
Bartoli.
It is Bartoli,
and
yes.
Frank van den Broeke.
And so this again, another significant move, as Bartoli clearly used to be a man for this region a couple of years ago. Now looking like he might well be returning to the grand old days of the mid-90s, when of course he won this race in 1996.
Well, in fact, just taking onto the back there was Frank van den Broeke. There are the two leaders, Guédon and Nico Martin. They've gone over the top now of Berendries. Just 3 more climbs to go towards the finish, 32 kilometers. Move coming off the front there. Comesso is the man